Gu Hongyao, who had never been cared for by her father, secretly humiliated by the current empress, and privately referred to as the useless princess by relatives of the imperial family, thought she would end her life with legs disabled like this, until that day arrived. Xuancai Daoti. The exclamation of surprise from the Immortal Messenger completely changed her fate, transforming her from a mocked, useless princess, to their unattainable, heavenly pride daughter. Junior sister, this is the Youlan Hua Rot Pill that senior brother has brought for you. After taking it, you can stand up. Hongyao, I heard that you have been missing some shadow puppetry at the foot of the mountain recently. This is a shadow puppet made by my master. Whatever you want to see, just say it and listen to it. Holy sister, senior sister, I recently happened to have 100 Flowers Immortal Clothes that I think are very suitable for you. Junior sister. Her own masters, senior brothers, senior sisters, and senior uncles all love her very much. Gu Hongyao can understand this, but what surprised her a bit was that since she entered the Immortal Sect, she has directly become a saint. The candidates for those saints not only did not hate themselves, but also showed great compassion for themselves. They prioritized themselves for any beautiful dresses, just like Gu Hongyao was their own sister. Later on, there was a saying circulating throughout the cultivation world. Don't provoke anyone, don't provoke Gu Hongyao. This is not to say that she has a bad temper, but that the group of immortal masters behind her cannot see her being wronged. Chapter 1. Disabled Princess with Two Legs. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. A ray of dawn in the east pierced through the thick clouds and ink, illuminating both the silent earth and the bloodshot eyes that stared at the eastern sky. If the common people of the Yun kingdom saw their own emperor, empress, and a group of imperial relatives at this moment, they would definitely say to others, "Who said the emperor doesn't need a golden hoe to hoe the land?" They eagerly look at the direction of the sun's rise, just like we eagerly wait for the sun to come out and work in the fields. Behind the dragon robe and phoenix robe is a light purple palace dress that exudes elegance and luxury. Father, mother, how long will we stand here foolishly? At this moment, Gu Yingqiu's heart was filled with displeasure. Her father, King Gu Chuchao, was the emperor of Chuyun Kingdom, and her mother, Defender Man, was the daughter of a prestigious family. She was also one of the few spiritual cultivators in Chuyun Kingdom who could cultivate spiritual power. She is such a proud woman that only others have been waiting for her. There is no such situation as staying up all night and eagerly waiting for others like now. Gu Chu's body was adorned with a dragon robe, exuding an unparalleled majesty. But if one observes closely, one will find that his body has long been eroded by wine and lust, leaving only a skin and a frame. But no matter how his body is hollowed out by wine and lust, he is also the emperor who has been in charge of the Cloud Country for more than 20 years. The gaze in his eyes is also extremely majestic, making people unable to resist kneeling down. At this moment, he heard his daughter's complaint and was about to speak out and scold the other party for being so indifferent, when he noticed that his dragon robe had been gently pulled by someone. Perhaps due to the cultivation of spiritual power, there were not many traces of time left on Wei Man's face. His still bright and charming face curved when Gu Chuchao's eyes showed a sense of helplessness. Then, he turned his gaze to Gu Yingqiu, who was born in October. Yingqiu, didn't Empress Mother tell you before? Today is the day when Yingqiu sect recruits disciples every 10 years. Gu Yingqiu's small face fully inherited the advantages of her own mother and was incredibly beautiful, but the hint of tyranny and malice between her eyebrows destroyed it to some extent. I don't want to go to that Yingqiu sect to cultivate. If I want to cultivate spiritual energy into spiritual cultivation, wouldn't there be a mother who can teach me? Wei Man also felt a bit headache when she saw Gu Yingqiu's arrogant appearance, but she did not attribute the latter's arrogant appearance to the consequences of her daily indulgence. Instead, she regarded it as the other party's reluctance to leave her side, which was a sign of family attachment. Look, is that a disciple of the Yingqiu sect? The rustling conversation of the imperial relatives behind her pulled Wei Man's thoughts back. She looked in the direction that the imperial relatives had cast their gaze, and her spiritual power moved to her eyes, making it clear that there was a black spot in the distant sky. Yingqiu, don't be petty. The master of Yingqiu sect is about to arrive. Those imperial relatives were only speculating, but upon hearing the empress's words, they confirmed that the person from the distant sky was the Yingqiu sect. The whispers of theft and conversation gradually faded away, with only occasional faint voices reminding their own descendants. No one noticed that there was a thin young girl figure standing in the shade of a tree in the distance, struggling to support the ancient tree beside her. Their eyes were filled with a strong desire that they did not have. They looked at the gradually whitening fish belly in the east, and at the black dots that were becoming more and more like human figures. Hongyao, this is your only chance to escape from here, you must seize it. Due to her excitement, the girl's pale complexion couldn't help but be tinged with a sickly blush. Although I don't have a natural spiritual body, my perception of metallic spiritual energy is so keen, not bad. The young man in a blue long shirt looked at Gu Hongyao in front of him, his face full of surprise, and his mouth was also full of praise. Although Gu Hongyao always believed that she was the proud daughter of heaven, when the man from the Yingqiu sect in front of her heard the praise, she couldn't help but raise her head, like a proud little peacock. The two men and one woman standing behind Gu Hongyao couldn't help but cast envious glances at Gu Hongyao's back when they heard the praise from the man in the green shirt. After all, they only received the evaluation from the man in the green shirt that their qualifications are average, and they can barely start from being miscellaneous disciples. The man in the blue shirt was not annoyed when he saw Gu Hongyao's arrogant appearance. Although their qualifications were almost the same, their identities were quite different. In the eyes of outsiders, he is a disciple of the Yingqiu sect and a messenger of the Immortal Sect, but only he knows that he is just one of the many disciples of the Yingqiu sect. Apart from the cultivation resources provided by the sect every month, his family cannot provide assistance for him on the path of spiritual cultivation. No matter what, this woman is also a princess of a country. Based on her qualifications and the cultivation resources of this cloud country, she may become an inner disciple in a few years. When I see her, I will have to call her senior sister. After feeling a little emotional in his heart, he turned his gaze to the group of royal relatives and relatives from the cloud country not far away, and slowly spoke up, "Is there anyone who hasn't participated in the qualification exploration?" The man in the blue shirt also knew that the princess of the cloud country named Gu Hongyao in front of him was the last person to be investigated by him, but he still followed the procedure and casually asked. However, to his surprise, as soon as he finished speaking, a slightly weak female voice rang out. Report to the Yingqiu sect's Lingjia, the young woman has not yet participated in the Yingqiu sect's selection process. The slightly weak but slightly resilient female voice sounded, and the imperial relatives in the square couldn't help but be taken aback, then turned their gaze towards the direction of the sound. Gu Hongyao looked at the thin figure with both hands leaning on sticks, gradually moving her body over, and a hint of disgust flashed in her eyes. Before the three words "little bastard" could be spoken, Gu Hongyao felt a surge in her heart. She then noticed the faint gaze from her mother, and realized that she was in public. She had no choice but to swallow those words and coldly looked at the weak girl wearing a dress that was not simple but could not afford luxury. She slowly said, "Sister, you don't want your parents to worry too much. Can you participate in such an occasion?" Is this the little princess? Why did the little princess come here? The frail girl ignored the whispers and lively gazes of the imperial relatives. Her resolute eyes stared at the ordinary-looking man in a blue shirt and said word by word, "Report to the Yingqiu sect spirit master, the little girl has not yet participated in the selection of Yingqiu sect." The man in the blue shirt looked at the frail girl leaning against the crutches and approaching him step by step. His gaze couldn't help but shift slightly downwards, and he paused for a moment on the other person's legs being dragged forward. Gu Hongyao saw that the weak girl was still moving forward step by step after hearing her words. Even though she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows, she planned to ignore the current scene and use her words to humiliate her severely. At this moment, Wei Man, who had left Yunhua, turned his head to look at the man in the blue shirt, his still beautiful and charming face adorned with a hint of apology. I made the Lingyi Sect's Lingjia laugh, but since my youngest daughter has already arrived, could you please test her qualifications, Lingjia? Mother, you. Just as Gu Hongyao was about to ask her why she wanted that little bastard to participate in the selection of Lingyi Sect, she was stopped by her mother's eyes. She was puzzled by this. Why would her mother help that little bastard? Since Empress Wei has spoken up, I, Chen Quan, am not a person who is unreasonable and unreasonable. The man in blue, Chen Quan, still has some respect for Wei Man, a spiritual being with higher strength than himself. But at the same time, he also had dissatisfaction with the frail girl with disabled legs. He was dissatisfied that the other party was already disabled, but the toad wanted to eat swan meat in an attempt to join his own Lingyi sect. Therefore, he did not approach the other party, but quietly waited for them to move towards him bit by bit. The frail girl was surprised when she heard that Wei Man would ask the Lingyi sect spirit master to test her qualifications for herself, but soon she realized that the other party probably wanted to crush the last hopes in her heart in front of everyone. After all, the current scenery of my legs is all thanks to the other party. The frail girl glanced calmly at her own leg. She is indeed naturally disabled, but from the moment she remembers, there is a faint force in her body that is repairing her naturally disabled legs. And whenever I almost have the opportunity to stand up again, the defender of the country, man, will appear, smiling and saying that he wants to use spiritual power to heal his legs and destroy the vitality that has finally been nurtured in his legs. In the eyes of outsiders, including her own father, the empress did not show any hostility towards her because she was a descendant of a commoner woman who had sex with her during the emperor's private visit. On the contrary, she treated herself as if she were her own. But only she knew what kind of snake and scorpion heart the beautiful appearance of the harem lord in front of her was. Completely relying on an indomitable spirit, the weak girl slowly moved her body to Chen Quan's front, then took a deep breath and placed her pale right hand with distinct joints on the 9-story spiritual tower held in the other person's palm, while secretly saying in her heart, Gu Hongyao, this is your only chance to escape, even to seek revenge in the future. You must succeed. A dark light emerged from the crystal-clear bottom of the tower, filling the entire 4 floors of the spiritual tower space in the blink of an eye. However, the dark light did not slow down at all and continued to rapidly rise, filling the remaining space in the spiritual tower. As the dark light filled the space of the 4 layers of spiritual pagoda, Gu Hongyao couldn't help but be stunned. Then she couldn't help but clench her fist, bite her red lips lightly with her teeth, and her eyes were full of disbelief. How could it be? I was just embarrassed to light up the 4th floor spiritual tower just now. How could she light up the 4th floor spiritual tower in the blink of an eye? Chen Quan looked at the spiritual tower still occupied by the Xuanguang in his palm, and his eyes were also filled with shock. And in his surprise. More precisely, in the surprised eyes of everyone present, including Gu Hongyao herself, the dark light gradually filled the entire 9-story spiritual tower. At this moment, the changes in the spirit tower are still taking place, with circles of ancient and rustic patterns appearing on the tower of the 9-story spirit tower. This situation is exactly the same as what is recorded in the book. Chen Quan recalled the contents of the ancient books he saw in the sect, and the joy in his eyes showed on the table, Xuancai Taoist style. It's Xuancai Taoist style. Chapter 2. Xuancai Daoti. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xuancai Daoti. What is that? Except for Chen Quan, the disciple of Lingyi sect, everyone on the square couldn't help but feel this doubt in their hearts. They were not foolish either. They guessed from Chen Quan's cheerful appearance that Gu Hongyao's cultivation ability in the Xuancai Dao body was far superior to her sister Gu Yingqiu. This made some relatives of the imperial family who used to bully Gu Hongyao in the palace without being seen by the emperor, unable to help but mutter in their hearts, now that this little princess flies into the sky, if we remember the past when we succeed in our cultivation in the future, will we still have a way to survive? Some imperial relatives who used to disdain bullying others secretly rejoice in their hearts. Fortunately, we hold ourselves aloof and have not offended the little princess who has now shown her talent. No matter how different the emotions of those imperial relatives were, their eyes coincidentally turned to the stubborn young girl standing in front of Chen Quan who could only stand on crutches. At this moment, Gu Hongyao did not pay attention to the complex gazes behind her. Her heart was filled with joy. Am I qualified to practice spiritual energy? Am I given the opportunity to truly control my own destiny and no longer rely on others to live? Just as she couldn't help but raise her lips slightly, a sharp voice mixed with jealousy pulled her thoughts back to reality. What about Xuancai's physical condition? Don't forget, she has disabled legs. Her legs' meridians are all blocked and atrophied. Gu Hongyao stared fixedly at the ancient spirit tower in Chen Quan's hand, her eyes slightly turning red due to jealousy. Why? Why did she work hard to light up the 4 layers of the spiritual tower, and that little bastard easily surpassed me? This little bastard's ability to survive in this world like before is already a gift from me and my mother. How dare she expect to become a spiritual master? How can she have a cultivation talent that even sect disciples cannot help but rejoice? Gu Hongyao saw that everyone around her had turned their gaze towards her after hearing her voice. She couldn't help but raise her lips slightly, and the faint smile on her face appeared somewhat malicious in the sunlight. Gu Hongyao, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Since that's the case, let me personally crush your hard-earned hope again. With such thoughts in mind, she turned her gaze to her half-sister, the little princess who was not favored in the Cloud Country, and said in a somewhat sympathetic and regretful tone, "Sister, although I have not yet formally practiced, I have also read many stories related to spiritual cultivation. As far as I know, there is no cultivation method that only operates in the upper body in this world." After speaking, she paused for a moment and turned her gaze to Chen Quan of the Yingqiu sect, saying, "Senior brother Chen, as a spiritual person, you should be more aware of these things than I am." At this moment, Chen Quan also realized the fact that the young girl in front of him with a Xuancai Daoti had legs disabled. He nodded lightly and said, "Not bad, there is no cultivation method in this world that can be practiced without a complete body meridian." After speaking, he turned his gaze to Gu Hongyao in front of him. Seeing that the other person's face still had a calm and resolute expression, his liking for this woman greatly increased in his heart. After all, cultivating spiritual energy and becoming a spiritual cultivator is not only about innate talent, but also about mentality. Therefore, when he saw Gu Hongyao hear his words that almost declared the other person unable to cultivate, his emotions did not collapse to the point of shouting loudly. How could he not look at the other person differently? After hearing Chen Quan's unvoiced voice, some of the imperial relatives breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts and said, "What? It's fortunate that I had the idea of apologizing to that little princess before. Now it seems that waste is waste, and I can only be waste for a lifetime." A few relatives of the imperial family had a regretful attitude. "Unfortunately, I thought that our small country of Chu Yun could produce a proud daughter from heaven." Gu Hongyao did not reveal what Chen Quan was thinking, and even the expression of despair that Gu Yingqiu and the lord of the harem, Wei Man, hoped for, was naturally due to her own situation, which she knew best. "As long as I leave this palace, without the empress's kind healing, I can stand up for at most 6 months, and then I can breathe spiritual energy and become a spiritual cultivator." Just as she was feeling a bit distressed about what to say to make the disciple of the Yingqiu sect, Chen Quan, bring him back, who seemed to be just a useless person at the moment, Chen Quan, standing not far from her, spoke again. "However, our spiritual cultivation is to go against the sky, compete with the heavens for life, and reach a high level of cultivation. It is not impossible for us to live forever and bring back life from death. As long as you return to the sect with me, little princess, and confirm that you are indeed a Xuancai Taoist body, the sect will have someone to help you repair the meridians in your legs. After hearing Chen Quan's words, Gu Hongyao slightly malicious smile on her face immediately froze. Gu Hongyao, on the other hand, showed a surprised expression while a hint of doubt flashed through her eyes. Then she looked at Chen Quan in front of her and couldn't help but say, "Senior brother Chen, didn't you just conclude that I am a Xuancai Daoti? Why do you say that I need to be confirmed by the sect now?" When Chen Quan heard Gu Hongyao refer to him as his senior brother, his expression on his face was different from the coldness of Gu Yingqiu's relationship with him when calling him senior brother. He smiled particularly heartily at the moment, saying, "That's because senior brother, the spiritual tower in my hand is only a replica of a real spiritual tower. It is more than enough to assess the cultivation qualifications of ordinary disciples. However, in your case, like the little princess, you naturally have to go through the spiritual tower in the sect for a second serious confirmation." In fact, in his opinion, even if he eventually glanced away, the girl in front of him was not the legendary Xuancai Daoti, and his cultivation talent was also one of those unparalleled geniuses. At that time, the sect would still be rewarded. With this in mind, he put away the spirit tower, took out the communication jade pendant bestowed upon him by the sect, and sent a message to the nearest inner disciple. From Gu Hongyao's perspective, when Chen Quan's wrist flipped in front of her, the spiritual pagoda disappeared and was replaced by a round jade pendant that was blue in color but had a lifelike crane relief on top. Chen Quan noticed Gu Hongyao's curious gaze and took advantage of the brief activation time of the communication jade pendant to smile and explain his confusion, saying, "This is the jade pendant of my Yingqiu sect disciple. In addition to being able to prove identity, it can also connect with fellow disciples within a 500-mile radius centered around oneself." As soon as he finished speaking, the lifelike eyes of the crane on the jade pendant in his hand suddenly lit up, and a light curtain appeared on the pendant. A man dressed in white and charming appeared in the light curtain. Chen Quan looked at the man in white in the light curtain and spoke respectfully, "Report to senior brother Xiao that I have discovered a person who is suspected to have a Xuancai Daoti." Before the word "good seedling" could be spoken, the man in white in the light curtain lost his ethereal feeling and almost looked at Chen Quan with bright eyes. His voice came out from the light curtain. "What? Chen Quan, what you're saying is true. Forget it, stop talking nonsense, just send me your current coordinates, and I'll be right there." Chapter 3. Excited Inner Sect Disciple. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In Chen Quan's memory, since he joined the sect, his senior brother Xiao Tianqi has always been charming and elegant, treating people with a gentle and refined demeanor. He always manages everything with strategic planning, and everything is under his control. It was the first time he had seen him in the other person with such a surprised and fanatical expression. So much so that he told Xiao Tianqi the coordinates of his current position, and after the figure of his senior brother Xiao disappeared into the light curtain projected by the communication jade pendant, he gradually regained his senses. Chen Quan, who had regained his senses, looked at the girl standing next to him with disabled legs with a somewhat complicated expression in his eyes, and couldn't help but feel emotional in his heart. It seems that there is not only a gap in cultivation between inner disciples and outer disciples, but also a gap in knowledge. As an outsider disciple, he only knows that Xuancai Daoti is a rare cultivation talent, but he is not very clear about how rare it is. After collecting some of the emotions in his heart, Chen Quan glanced at Gu Hongyao again and then turned his gaze to the young boys and girls who had been detected to have cultivation talents not far away. He slowly spoke up and said, "I believe you have also heard what senior brother Xiao said earlier. He will arrive here in at most 1 hour. I will give you half an hour to go back and pack your luggage and say goodbye to your family." As soon as Chen Quan spoke, the young people who were also qualified to practice in the Yingqiu sect looked at me, I looked at you, and finally hurriedly walked towards their families slightly away. After some discussion, they hurriedly went home to pack their luggage. Gu Yingqiu looked at Gu Hongyao, who was not far from Chen Quan, and the resentment in her eyes was almost uncontrollable. Just as she was about to lose control of her jealousy, a pair of hands, although somewhat aged, were maintained like a young girl, covering the back of her hands. "Chior, don't just stand here foolishly. Go back and tidy up quickly." Upon hearing this, Gu Hongyao turned her gaze to Wei Man, who had arrived by her side at some point. With a somewhat puzzled tone, she spoke, "Mother." Under the signal of Wei Man's gaze, she swallowed the words that had already reached her mouth and obediently let her mother pull her, walking towards the direction of the harem. As the ruler of a country, Gu Chu should have been extremely happy about the fact that both of his daughters were favored by the spiritual beings of the Yingqiu sect. But the awkwardness lies in the fact that the daughter, who is extremely talented and even highly valued by the disciples of the Yingqiu sect, is not treated well by himself in his daily life. If it weren't for her stubbornness in participating in the cultivation qualification test today, he would probably have forgotten about her. He had intended to step forward and ask for warmth, letting his daughter know that his father was still concerned about her. However, with the hint of his queen's gaze, he temporarily suppressed this idea in his heart and walked towards the direction of the harem with the other party and his other daughter. Anyway, it was Gu who gave her life. Even if I don't pay any attention to her on a daily basis, Gu is still her father, isn't he? If there's anything she needs to say, it's not too late to let her know when she's leaving. With this thought in mind, Gu Chuchao calmly followed his beloved empress and daughter away from the square in front of the palace. Gu Hongyao was not surprised that Gu Chuchao left without saying a word to herself. I'm afraid in the heart of this rising emperor, he almost forgot the name of his daughter, right? Gu Hongyao had a somewhat self-deprecating thought in her heart. Chen Quan saw that everyone else had left, but the girl in front of him, named Gu Hongyao, had no intention of leaving. He was curious and asked, "Little princess, why don't you go back and pack your luggage?" "Senior brother Chen, you don't have to call me little princess in such an out-of-town manner." Gu Hongyao smiled shyly, then silently lowered her eyes to look at her unconscious legs and whispered, "I have nothing to tidy up." There were originally some relics left by her mother, but unfortunately, they were all smashed and destroyed by Gu Yingqiu's people. Thinking of this, Gu Hongyao couldn't help but grip the grip of the cane that supported her standing. "Gu Yingqiu, and that good Empress Wei Man, there are some things I have never forgotten, waiting to settle accounts with you slowly." Upon hearing Gu Hongyao's words, Chen Quan also noticed the other party's lowered gaze and thought of the scene he had seen after arriving at the Cloud Country. He immediately guessed the other party's past situation and treatment, and couldn't help but feel a sense of pity in his heart. "Sister Gu, don't worry, when you return to Yingqiu sect, no one will dare to bully you again. Yingqiu sect is your home. If anyone wants to bully you, we Yingqiu sect will be the first to refuse." Gu Hongyao has suffered a lot of cold looks and grievances over the years, so she can also feel that Chen Quan's words are from the bottom of her heart, rather than being polite and trying to win her over. A warm feeling can't help but flow in her heart, and she smiled and said, "Well, I naturally believe senior brother Chen's words, junior sister." Chen Quan couldn't help but stare at Gu Hongyao's gentle smile for a moment, and it took him a while to come back to his senses. As he regained his senses, he realized that his gaze was still fixed on Gu Hongyao's face just now and even now. He quickly averted his gaze and then, as if to ease the awkward atmosphere, scratched the back of his head and said awkwardly, "Actually, calling you junior sister is something I have taken advantage of you. With your talent, once you return to the sect and officially confirm your identity as an inner disciple, I won't be able to escape. Then I'll have to change my name to Senior Sister Gu. After hearing Chen Quan's words, Gu Hongyao's face became quite serious and she said, "Anyway, in my heart, Senior Sister Chen, you will always be my senior brother." "That's a good relationship," Chen Quan said with a smile. But he didn't take the other person's words to heart either. Then he seemed to have remembered something. With a gentle flick of his right hand on a small cloth bag around his waist, a wicker chair appeared in the open space in front of the two. "Miss Gu, your legs and feet are inconvenient. It's better to sit down and rest for a while. Gu Hongyao didn't hesitate either. After thanking her senior brother Chen, she sat down on the rattan chair and then looked curiously at the other person's small cloth bag. If she hadn't misread earlier, a faint light flashed on the small cloth bag around her waist, and the rattan chair she was sitting on now appeared out of thin air, right? Chen Quan noticed Gu Hongyao's curious gaze and smiled as he opened his mouth to explain, this is called a storage bag. And just as Chen Quan briefly described some common knowledge in the cultivation world for Gu Hongyao, Gu Yingqiu and her father and mother had already returned to the palace. That little slut. Even though she was born to a lowly commoner, why is her talent for cultivation stronger than mine? Gu Yingqiu's beautiful little face twisted slightly at this moment due to jealousy. Yingqiu. Anyway, she's also your sister. You're going too far by saying that about her. Gu Chuchao sternly rebuked his beloved daughter for the first time. The reason for this is naturally due to Gu Hongyao's talent for cultivation. Father, even you have a higher opinion of that little slut, right? Gu Yingqiu couldn't help but widen her beautiful eyes, her eyes slightly red as she looked at her father. Wei Man had just finished giving orders to his trusted maid when he turned his head and saw this scene. The gloomy feeling in her eyes flashed away, and then as Gu Chuchao was about to reprimand Gu Yingqiu again, she spoke softly. All right, don't argue over such a small matter between you father and daughter. After a moment of pause, she continued, Yingqiu, what your father said is not without reason. Anyway, Hongyao is also your own sister. Even Empress Dowager. Gu Yingqiu's eyes became increasingly red. At this moment, Wei Man's trusted maid turned back and whispered a few words in the ear of her master. After listening to his trusted maid's words, Wei Man interrupted his daughter's words in a loud voice. There have been many geniuses in history who held on to their talents and were proud, but ultimately ended up in a tragic fate. Therefore, Yingqiu, you must pay more attention to this aspect and not let your sister go astray. After hearing the words of his own empress, Gu Chuchao was deeply moved in his heart. Not only did she not have any hostility towards Hongyao because she was a mistake I made when I was young and a child born to other women, but she also thought so about her. I am truly ashamed of her in these years. But Gu Yingqiu recognized the true meaning in her mother's words, and after a moment of flickering eyes, she swallowed the remaining words back into her stomach and fell silent. When Wei Man saw his daughter's appearance, a hint of satisfaction flashed in her eyes. Is that right? How could my daughter, Wei Man, not know the simple truth that small grievances lead to big plans? Thinking of what her trusted maid had just said, she turned her gaze to the person beside her who was spending time with her and said softly, Chuchao, I'll take Yingqiu to pack some clothes first. Upon hearing this, Gu Chuchao didn't think much. He nodded and asked the palace maids to escort his wife and daughter away. After Wei Man returned to the room with his daughter, he immediately asked the maid to bring the exquisite wooden box from the table and handed it to his daughter. After opening the exquisite wooden box, Gu Yingqiu looked at the jade bracelet placed on the soft red cloth in the box and couldn't help but wonder, a jade bracelet. Mother, what are you doing for your daughter with this jade bracelet? She doesn't lack jewelry. Wei Man also knew that her daughter had not officially started practicing and was not aware of some common knowledge issues in the cultivation world. Therefore, she smiled and said to her, my silly daughter, this is not a simple jade bracelet. It is a storage bracelet that ordinary disciples of a sect do not have. A storage bracelet. Gu Yingqiu blinked her eyes. Upon hearing what her mother had said, the patterns on this bracelet that she had originally thought were a bit old-fashioned now became even more rustic. Yeah, the storage bracelet. Wei Man's gaze fell on the storage bracelet. Although the world of the spirit and the world of the mortal are two separate worlds, there are also beings equivalent to blacksmiths and pharmacists, but their status is not as low as that of the mortal world. In the world of the spirit, alchemists and alchemists are both respected by thousands of people. And this storage bracelet is made by a master of alchemists. The storage tools that most disciples of a sect possess are mostly storage bags, with a maximum storage space of only 40.50 square meters. A higher level item than a storage bag is a storage bracelet. Storage necklaces and other similar tools are usually only available to inner disciples who are highly valued in major sections. And Yingqiu, your storage bracelet is also of excellent quality in this type of tool, with a full space of 300 square meters. Gu Hongyao couldn't help but smile when she heard her mother say that storage bracelets are usually only available to highly valued inner disciples. When she heard that the quality of the storage bracelet was even better, her smile deepened a bit, so much so that she didn't pay much attention to what her mother said to her next. One reason is that her mood is too joyful at this moment, and the other reason is that she has not officially started practicing yet, and she is not clear about the value of the spiritual stones and elixirs her mother mentioned. This storage bracelet contains some cultivation resources that I have prepared for you over the years. There are 536 lower-grade spirit stones and 10 bottles of spirit-gathering pills that can improve spiritual cultivation. Each bottle has 10, which is 100. When Gu Hongyao happily put the storage bracelet on her left wrist and proudly returned to the square in front of the hall, she realized that she was the last person to pass the qualification assessment and also noticed the handsome man in white who appeared on the square in front of the hall. He should be that senior brother Xiao, right? Judging from what senior brother Chen said, he is an inner disciple of the Yingqiu sect, so his knowledge must be extraordinary, right? Gu Hongyao thought of this and seemingly unintentionally raised her left hand to stroke the drooping hair on her ear, revealing the jade bracelet on her wrist, intending to catch the surprised gaze of the inner disciple of the Yingqiu sect in her eyes. However, to her surprise, the inner disciple of the Yingqiu sect did not show the expression she wanted to see, but instead gave her a somewhat impatient glance. What a procrastination! As Xiao Tianqi spoke, he took out a palm-sized green boat from the storage ring in his hand. After injecting spiritual power, it swelled in the wind and in the blink of an eye, it became a normal-sized green boat suspended in the air beside him. You guys, hurry up and board the green wooden boat. Xiao Tianqi said to Gu Hongyao and others in a bad mood, then turned his gaze to Gu Hongyao who stood up again on crutches next to him. Based on Chen Quan's description just now, he also learned about Gu Hongyao's situation. He spoke gently and said, Gu Shimi, there may be some turbulence later, so I have to support you. Men and women are not compatible, and I have offended you a bit. After speaking, he reached out and supported one of Gu Hongyao's arms. Then, a gentle breeze came to their feet, and they were safely placed on the green wooden boat. Upon seeing this, Chen Quan quickly used his lightness technique and jumped onto the green wooden boat. Gu Hongyao and the others looked at me and looked at you. In the end, they couldn't help but turn their gaze to the green wooden boat that was slightly above the ground, with a somewhat ugly expression on their faces. Of course, Wei Man would not let her daughter climb onto the green wooden boat with both hands regardless of her appearance. She immediately learned Xiao Tianqi's methods and used a gentle breeze to send her onto the boat. However, the process was far less elegant than the motionless elegance of Xiao Tianqi and Gu Hongyao, appearing a bit shaky. After the other few people climbed onto the green wooden boat like they had climbed over the wall, Xiao Tianqi used a trick to pinch it and let it soar into the air, flying towards the direction of the sky. On the green wooden boat, Chen Quan looked at his senior brother Xiao, who arrived more than half an hour earlier than expected, and exclaimed with some emotion, I didn't expect you, senior brother Xiao, to use the Wanli flying talisman you obtained in the inner sect disciple competition. Xiao Tianqi smiled gently upon hearing the words and said, it's just a talisman. Compared to taking junior sister Gu back to the sect faster, it's nothing. At first, he did not have any intention of using the 10,000 Li flying talisman, after all, it was a reward that he could only obtain by entering the top 10 in the inner sect disciple competition. But when he replied to the sect about Gu Hongyao's intelligence, the sect asked him to spare no effort to bring Gu Hongyao back to the sect as soon as possible, which made him determined to use the 10,000 Li flying talisman. The communication jade pendant that was pinned around his waist flashed with radiance. He picked it up and found that it was a message sent from within the sect. He asked if he was returning to the sect with Gu Hongyao. He quickly replied to the sect and was already on his way back at full speed. After replying to the message, Xuancai couldn't help but mutter in his heart. The sound in the jade pendant just now seems to be the voice of the peak owner of Xuecai Peak. Is it my illusion? What Xuancai didn't know was that since he reported the news of Gu Hongyao to the sect, the senior officials qualified to accept apprentices in the entire sect have completely caused a sensation. Chapter 4. Sect Sensation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Yingqiu sect covers a vast area, with countless immortal mountains and peaks within its sect. However, the most famous and even known to other sects are only the 5 peaks of Xianfu, Dongye, Xianyu, Xuecai, and Yuelu. On weekdays, unless it is a major event related to the survival of the sect, the leaders of each peak stay on their own peaks. Like now, the colorful hidden light rises from each mountain and then all land on Xianfu Peak, which is the only 3 scenes since the founding of the Yingqiu sect. In the past, various rare birds and beasts on Xianfu Peak were active in the mountains and forests, giving people a vibrant landscape of a human fairyland. However, today those rare birds and beasts are staying in their own territory, bending down and trembling to look at the powerful and oppressive escape light that occasionally passes by in the sky. Some supernatural beasts that had already opened their minds carefully felt the breath emitted by the escape light, and then couldn't help but silently shout in their hearts. This is the breath of the peak master of Xianyu Peak. The master of Dongye Peak. Master, didn't she say that the master of Dongye Peak was preparing to cross the spiritual shadow realm in seclusion? How could he appear here? The leader of Xuecai Peak has also arrived. So, with the addition of the leader who already resides in Xianfu Peak and the leader of Yuelu Peak who came to Xianfu Peak as a guest this morning, all 5.5 steps of Yingqiu sect's experts in the spirit shadow realm have gathered together. Did something big happen? This idea not only appeared in the minds of those exotic beasts, but also in the hearts of those disciples in the sect who did not practice in seclusion. In their imagination, the leaders of the 5 great peaks and the elders of the sect were sitting in the main hall of the Xianfu Peak, discussing the future of their Yingqiu sect with great seriousness. However, Elder Qin Xian, you've already taken in almost 10 apprentices. Can you teach that little girl to be under your tutelage? A man in red, with a rosy complexion and an appearance of 40 or 50 years old, looked at the middle-aged man next to him, who was plain-looking and wearing a blue Taoist robe. He spoke to persuade him to give up his apprenticeship. Before the elder named Qin Xian could speak, a round-faced woman wearing a goose-yellow palace dress sat not far from him and spoke calmly, "Elder Du, if I remember correctly, there are over 10 disciples under your sect." Upon hearing this, Du Yuanzhou said without blushing or gasping for breath, "Elder He Lin, what are you talking about? The disciples I have received are only registered disciples. How can they compare to the disciples who have entered the room that Elder Qin Xian has received? The situation where you don't let me, I don't let you, not only happens to the 3 elders, but also to the other elders in the hall. Some even have a violent temper and just stick their necks to expose each other's secrets, trying to prove that they are not suitable to become the genius disciple of the upcoming sect." On the seat at the top of the main hall, Li Guanqi, the contemporary leader of the Yingqiu sect, pinched his eyebrows with a headache. Then he noticed the other peak masters who were gradually entering the entrance of the hall. He quickly cleared his throat and calmly spoke out to stop the noisy scene, which was like a mortal market. "All right, don't argue anymore. The youngest age present here is already 180 years old, why are you still like a mortal child?" The leader spoke up, and the elders gradually quieted down. Later, they also noticed that the leaders of each peak had already gathered together, and they knew that it was probably not their turn to bring the talented disciple into their own sect. "Although I cannot admit that disciple to our sect, if the leader of the peak admits her, wouldn't she also be a disciple within our sect?" This idea suddenly bloomed in the hearts of those elders, and then turned their hopeful gaze to the mountain peak master where they were located, hoping that their own peak master could later win over the master who seemed to have the Xuancai Daoti. The leaders of each peak naturally noticed the hopeful gaze of their elders, and there were some emotional changes in their hearts. The leader of Dongye Peak spoke up first and said, "Master, junior brother. You also know about my situation, senior brother. I was the first among our senior siblings to enter the Spirit Pearl realm and also the longest stuck in the half-step Spirit Shadow realm. Senior brother, my lifespan is also limited. To be honest, I regret to say that there is still no one who can pass on my legacy." Li Guanqi looked at the white-haired old man wearing a black and white Taoist robe, and couldn't help but twitch his lips. "Shou Yuan is not much anymore. Senior Yan, you can say at least there are still 500 years of Shou Yuan to enjoy, isn't that much?" But he still didn't speak up and dismantled his senior brother's platform, just pretending not to recognize the almost explicit meaning in his words, Yan Anqing's senior brother. Although Li Guanqi did not dismantle Yan Anqing's platform, Su Baiyan, the leader of Xianyu Peak who usually does not deal with the latter, immediately spoke up and dismantled the platform, saying, "Ah, Senior Yan, I didn't expect you to even say such things. Although you were indeed the first to enter the Spirit Pearl realm and the oldest among our senior siblings, when it comes to the remaining longevity Yuan, I'm afraid none of us senior siblings have as many as you, the alchemy master. Have you ever refined an elixir with the added longevity Yuan?" When Yan Anqing saw Su Baiyan demolishing his platform, she felt a little angry. Then her old face turned slightly red and she said, "Su Baiyan. What you said is like you didn't eat the longevity pill that my senior brother refined back then. Eating naturally means eating, but different qualities of longevity-enhancing pills also increase the longevity Yuan differently." Su Baiyan felt guilty, so his voice became even quieter. "Who knows, senior brother, did you leave the best for yourself? You." Yan Anqing's eyebrows were raised in anger by Su Baiyan's words. At this moment, the beautiful woman in a watercolored long dress next to the two of them quickly spoke up and tried to reconcile, saying, all right, senior brother Yan and senior brother Su, you two should stop arguing. Don't hurt the harmony of our school friendship for so many years." After hearing the words of his junior sister, Yan Anqing's emotions gradually calmed down. He also knew that Su Baiyan held a grudge against him because of that incident back then, and he knew he was at fault for it, so he didn't argue too much with him. After seeing that the two of them had not argued again, Bai Wei, the peak leader of Xuecai Peak, couldn't help but smile on her lips. Then, she restrained the smile on her lips and turned her gaze to her senior leader, saying softly, "Senior brother, according to the news from the inner disciple, the little girl still has hidden diseases in her legs and is quite inconvenient to move around. Even if she takes our Immortal Sect's miraculous medicine, it will take some time for her to fully recover and return to normal. During this period, her movements will definitely be inconvenient and she needs someone to take care of her. I believe that without further explanation from junior sister, you can understand the truth that men and women are not compatible." Upon hearing the words of his junior sister, Li Guanqi could only praise in his heart that she really had a good plan, which kicked the three senior brothers out of the game. However, the young junior sister of Yuelu Peak has always been aloof, always finding it troublesome to take in apprentices. In this way, Qing Bai Wei was able to make it difficult for them to refute and let the disciple be admitted to the sect. While thinking this way, he turned his gaze to Yan Anqing and Su Baiyan. It seemed that the other two wanted to speak up and try again, but when he thought about the issue of incompatibility between men and women, he fell silent again. He could only sigh in his heart and plan to announce that the disciple would be taught by his junior sister Qing Bai Wei in the future. At this moment, the originally tightly closed stone gate of the main hall suddenly slowly opened to both sides, and a young girl dressed in a snowy white dress carrying a delicately shaped long sword slowly walked in from outside the hall. "Senior sister Qing, senior brother Li, in this situation, why do you care about the cliché teaching method of one teacher, one disciple? Such a good seedling, don't you want to pass on your lifelong learning to each other? The girl's voice was like the clear spring water in the mountains, slowly rippling in the hearts of everyone in the hall. Upon hearing this, Li Guanqi's heart suddenly moved. He looked at the young girl who was as cold as a fairy who seemed to have been exiled for 9 days and tentatively said, Sister Lin, do you mean that we are all the masters of that disciple? But my Lingyi sect, no, not to mention our Lingyi sect. There have not been many people taking one person as their disciple in the entire Kanglan domain. That's because they haven't met such a good seedling, Lin Qingyun, the current leader of the Moon Egret Peak, said expressionlessly. When Qin Baiwei heard Lin Qingyun's words, she secretly said something bad. When she looked at Yan Anqing and their faces with the corner of her eye, she found that they were clearly moved by Lin Qingyun's words, and her heart became even more depressed. She thought that her junior sister had always been idle and would not compete with her for that good talent, but now, although the other party did not compete with her, and she could also become the master of that good talent, she was not the only master. A flash of inspiration flashed in her mind, and Qin Baiwei smiled and spoke again, Sister Lin is right. Teaching such a good seedling alone is a waste of the other person's talent. But as I mentioned earlier, that little girl has some inconvenience in her legs and needs someone to take care of her for a while. Before she could finish speaking, Lin Qingyun interrupted her and said, so she'll stay at my Yuelu Peak for now. As soon as Qin Baiwei heard these words, she became a little anxious and quickly spoke up, Sister Lin. You also know that the little girl is a Xuancai Daoti. She is most suitable for practicing techniques such as ice, water, and yin. My Xueka Peak is shrouded in ice and snow all year round, and she can cultivate spiritual power with half the effort. Lin Qingyun spoke calmly and said, Senior Sister Qin, as you have said, the little girl's legs and feet are inconvenient and she has not officially started practicing yet. Your Xueka Peak is always icy and snowy. What should I do if I freeze the little girl? My Yuelu Peak is as pleasant as spring all year round, so it's better for her to go to my Yuelu Peak. Alright, you two don't have to argue anymore, Li Guanqi also made a decision at this moment. As Lin Shimi said, we are both the disciples' masters, but currently, the other's physical condition is better for him to follow Lin Shimi back to Yuelu Peak and recuperate well. He saw that Qin Baiwei was still a bit unwilling, and quickly spoke up, Junior Sister Qin, we all know the principle of achieving twice the result with half the effort in a good cultivation environment. When that little girl recovers her body, it's not too late to officially start practicing at your Xueka Peak. Since you have said so, Master Senior Brother, I am also a person with a general understanding, Qin Baiwei nodded somewhat helplessly. Then she glared at Lin Qingyun with anger, her cheeks slightly bulging with anger, and said, Lin Senior Sister, you also heard what Master Senior Brother said. Lin Qingyun slightly curled her lips and showed a faint smile, her voice still cold. Of course I heard it. I will definitely let that disciple go to a good cultivation environment to practice. Although Qin Baiwei also had a stunning appearance, compared to her sister Lin Qingyun, who was praised as the most beautiful woman in the Kanglan domain, she was like a little witch seeing a big witch. Therefore, when she saw the other party's smile that was enough to put a smile on her face, she couldn't help but be a bit stunned. She didn't realize that what the other party was saying was to let the disciple go to a good cultivation environment for cultivation, rather than to her own Xueka Peak for cultivation. And just as the atmosphere inside the conference hall became joyful and harmonious, a warm voice sounded in the hall. Why is Xianfu Peak so lively today? Did something good happen? The crowd in the main hall followed the sound, and only then did they notice a young man dressed in white and as beautiful as a woman appeared next to their leader Li Guanqi. The sound. Li Guanqi looked at the young man next to him, who was completely devoid of any spiritual energy fluctuations, resembling a commoner in cloth clothes. He quickly stood up and bowed to him with a fist, his face extremely respectful. Master Mu, have you passed the level? Master Mu, you're here. As soon as Li Guanqi finished speaking, the rest of the people in the hall, including Lin Qingyun, who was usually as cold as ice, respectfully bowed to the young man in white. Damn it! I just forgot that there is also this Mu Baiyu in the sect, Senior Mu. Qin Baiwei, Su Baiyan, and Yan Anqing were secretly communicating with each other in their eyes. Senior Mu has always been divine and agile, shouldn't he compete with us for disciples? From his appearance alone, the young man, who looked like a woman, seemed to sense what Qin Baiwei and the others were thinking at the moment. He glanced at them and then turned his gaze to Li Guanqi, who was respectful and had a youthful posture in front of him, and smiled. I was awakened by the birds raised in the mountains and found Xianfu Peak very lively. So, I will take a look. Let's talk about it. Has Lingyi sect encountered any good things recently? Chapter 5. The Holy Maiden of the Sect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xuancai Daoti. After listening to Li Guanqi's words, the young man in white, Mu Baiyu, seemed to have remembered something that didn't match his appearance, as if a hint of memories flashed in his eyes as he saw through the world. If that little girl really has a mysterious and elegant physique, perhaps her wish could really come true without time. Su Baiyan, Qin Baiwei, and others were momentarily taken aback when they heard the wooden senior mention an obvious woman's name, and immediately had thoughts of disbelief in their hearts. Senior Mu. Isn't he referring to the first leader of our Lingyi sect? Mu Baiyu glanced at the somewhat stunned Qin Baiwei and others again, and then slowly spoke up, saying, if that little girl is really Xuancai Daoti, then I have really come to be interested in accepting her as my disciple. It's bad. Things are really moving in the direction we least want to see. Su Baiyan and Qin Baiwei, and others, look at me, I look at you, and there is a faint bitterness in their eyes. But they also knew that if Master Mu really took the girl who seemed to have the Xuancai Daoti as his disciple, it would be a great good thing for both the girl and their Lingyi sect. Although the origin of Mu Baiyu is mysterious, and he is usually a divine dragon, Li Guanqi and other senior members of the sect know that this Mu Senior has been a significant figure since the founding of their Lingyi sect, and tens of thousands of years have passed since then. Although the other person appears to be an ordinary person with no spiritual fluctuations on their body, they have lived for tens of thousands of years, or even longer. If he were truly an ordinary person, how could he have lived for so long? I also heard your conversation just now. Mu Baiyu looked at Su Baiyan and others who were secretly communicating and said with a smile, I think Miss Lin is right. With such a good seedling, it's a bit wasteful for me to teach alone. It's better to teach this little girl together, as Miss Lin suggested earlier. Since Senior Mu, you have already spoken up, then there is no reason for us to disobey. Li Guanqi replied respectfully. But the bitterness in his heart did not dissipate slightly due to Mu Baiyu's words. Although Senior Mu said so, how dare we really become the master of that little girl with him? Isn't this a chaotic hierarchy? Mu Baiyu ignored the complex emotions of the people in the hall and turned slightly to look in the direction of the stone gate. His gentle gaze seemed to pierce through the stone gate and look into the distance. On the green wooden boat, Gu Hongyao lazily sat on the soft cushion prepared by Xiao Tianqi for herself, leaning on the side of the boat with one hand, watching the white soft clouds flowing past her, her eyes filled with curiosity. Compared to Gu Hongyao's rather lazy posture, the young men and girls who had the qualification to join the Lingyi sect and came out of the cloud country together, such as Gu Yingqiu, appeared much more embarrassed. The strong wind brought by the rapid progress of the Qingmu boat at high altitude made them shiver. If it weren't for Chen Quan's timely care, some of them would have been blown off the Qingmu boat long ago. Gu Yingqiu, who had long been disheveled by the strong wind, scraped off the strands of hair that had been stuck on her face. She looked at the strands of hair only moving slightly, like Gu Hongyao's face, with a look of resentment in her eyes. Senior brother Xiao. Bah. He's just a petty person who tends to follow the crowd and gain power. They are all people who can join the sect. Why is he only using spiritual power to protect that little slut? Xuancai naturally didn't know that Gu Hongyao had cursed himself in his heart at this moment, and he didn't want to use his spiritual power to protect the other young men and girls who could enter the sect. However, the spiritual power consumed by this fast-moving green wooden boat was too great, and he could only barely protect Gu Hongyao. He also instructed Chen Quan to protect the other boys and girls, but because the latter's cultivation was far inferior to his, the protective effect was naturally not as good as his. But it's just that the hair will be blown a bit messy, so as not to be cut by the strong wind on the skin. We will soon enter the territory of our Yingqiu sect. Junior brothers and sisters, welcome to Yingqiu sect. Gu Hongyao heard Xuancai's gentle voice, and couldn't help but turn her gaze to the front of her. She happened to see the boundless clouds receding in all directions, and then the immortal mountains shrouded in mist came into view. Indeed, it's Xuancai Daoti. Li Guanqi slowly put away the detection treasure in his hand and looked at Gu Hongyao, who stood in front of him with a well-behaved and likable face. His joy was revealed on the surface and he murmured to himself, "It seems that the heavens are really going to revive my Yingqiu sect." After hearing the leader confirm that the young girl in front of her was indeed Xuancai Daoti, several peak leaders and many elders in the main hall of the council looked at Gu Hongyao with even fiercer eyes. Gu Hongyao was well aware that the situation where her gaze was even hotter towards her was not her illusion, so she couldn't help but feel a bit anxious and fearful. After all, since she remembered the incident, the gaze she received has been full of malicious looks such as ridicule. It was the first time she had such a warm gaze like now. Lin Qingyun noticed the slight change in Gu Hongyao's fear, like that of a startled deer. With a light movement, Lian Bu arrived at the latter's side and immediately turned his gaze to his head senior brother. More precisely, it was the young man in white next to him, who had a mysterious background as Senior Mu. She did not feel any restraint because of the other party's senior identity, and still spoke coldly as usual. "Senior brother in charge, Senior Mu. Although Hongyao has been protected by nephew Xiao along the way, she seems to be tired too. There's nothing urgent at the moment, why don't I take her back to Yuelu Peak to rest first?" Li Guanqi also noticed that Gu Hongyao was clearly somewhat frightened by the enthusiastic gaze of the elders, but he did not take the initiative to speak. Instead, he turned his gaze to Mu Baiyu beside him, whose eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation, with an attitude of asking Master Mu to make a decision. Watching chess, if I remember correctly, is the identity of the holy maiden of Yingqiu sect still vacant? Mu Baiyu did not answer whether Lin Qingyun was okay or not, but suddenly mentioned the matter of the holy maiden of Yingqiu sect. "Senior Hui Mu, the holy maiden in the sect has not been decided yet." Li Guanqi hesitated for a moment and added, "But if we follow the original arrangement, we will choose from the 3 true disciples of Chu Qianyang, Yang Liujiao, and Su Jianjian in 3 years. Since we haven't decided on a sect saint yet, there's no need to go through so much trouble, just consider Hongyao." Mu Baiyu's voice remained gentle, but it was full of unquestionable meaning. "Yes, Senior Mu." Li Guanqi naturally dared not have any dissatisfaction with Mu Baiyu's decision. Mu Baiyu's gaze once again turned to Lin Qingyun, who was as cold as snow not far away and did not feel any restraint due to his identity. He spoke in a tone of inquiry, asking, "Miss Lin, do you mind if I go back to Yuelu Peak with you and visit your Yuelu Peak?" Upon hearing his words, Lin Qingyun knew that her calculations were about to fall through. She couldn't help but sigh lightly in her heart, and her expression remained unchanged as she spoke. "Master Mu, would you be willing to visit my Yuelu Peak as a guest? It's something that my Yuelu Peak cannot do without." "How could I mind?" Upon seeing this, Qing Baiwei's beautiful eyes turned slightly and she immediately smiled lightly, saying, "Miss Lin, you probably don't mind if I go to your Moon Hero Peak for a walk, do you?" As soon as Qing Baiwei spoke, Li Guanqi, Yan Anqing, and Su Baiyan all reacted and looked at Lin Qingyun, the young junior sister, in unison. Although the 3 of them didn't speak, the meaning in their eyes was very clear. Lin Qingyun's face, as if it had remained unchanged in ancient times, showed a rare hint of helplessness. Senior brothers and sisters, if you are willing to come to my moon egret peak as a guest, I am naturally very welcome. Under the gaze of many elders in the hall, the peak leaders of their respective families and the mysterious senior Mu surrounded Gu Hongyao and left the main hall like stars holding the moon. This scene made them somewhat unable to believe their own eyes. The last time the peak master and his companions were so happy seemed to be 200 years ago, before that incident. Gu Hongyao also guessed from Chen Quan and Xiao Tianqi's attitude towards her that the Xuancai Daoti she possessed was extraordinary. However, she did not expect that the high-level officials in the sect, after confirming that she truly possessed the Xuancai Daoti, would have a more enthusiastic attitude towards her than she had imagined. This made her feel a bit intimidated, as if she was dreaming. If this is really just a dream, I hope I can wake up later. At least, let me feel the feeling of being loved more. When Gu Hongyao thought of this, her eyes couldn't help but turn a little red, and a little water light appeared in them. Lin Qingyun, along with Qin Baiwei and Gu Hongyao, were both women, so the former two carefully helped the latter leave the main hall of the council, one on the left and one on the right. Due to their intimate contact, the two of them first noticed the abnormality on Gu Hongyao's face. "Hongyao, why are you crying?" Qin Baiwei looked worried and asked with great concern, "Is there anything uncomfortable? Are we helping you walk too fast?" Lin Qingyun noticed that Gu Hongyao's eyes were slightly red earlier than Qin Baiwei's. However, due to her personality, she, who was not good at communicating with others, was still thinking about how to express her concern to Gu Hongyao. She had already heard her senior sister Qing speak with concern, which made her swallow words that were almost on her lips. Although she didn't express her concern to Gu Hongyao, she injected a gentle spiritual power into her body to warm and soothe her body, relieving any discomfort. "No, there's nothing uncomfortable." Gu Hongyao timidly spoke. Before she could finish speaking, she felt a warm sensation filling her body, which made her realize that her current situation was indeed a reality rather than a dream. In this way, she felt even more embarrassed to say what she had thought she was dreaming before. King Baiwei looked at the person beside her with a hesitant expression, gently pinched the other person's soft and fair little hand, and said softly, "It's okay, Yingqiu sect will be your home from now on. If you have anything to say, just say it without feeling embarrassed." Home. Gu Hongyao's eyes became even more rosy when she heard Qin Baiwei's words. After hesitating for a moment, she timidly spoke under the hopeful and encouraging gaze around her. I just thought I was dreaming. I've never had this feeling of being cared for before." Qin Baiwei listened to Gu Hongyao's sweet and sticky voice, but the content of the other person's words made her extremely distressed, and she also felt a little puzzled. From the message that nephew Xiao sent back to the sect, it seems that Hongyao should be the little princess of that country. How could she say that she has never been cared for before? She was pondering in her heart, but her gaze couldn't help but turn to the other person's legs, which were wrapped in spiritual power by herself and Lin Qingyun and floating off the ground. Her heart suddenly became clearer, and she felt even more sorry for Gu Hongyao. Yuelu Peak is far away from Xianfu Peak, but it is also for ordinary people and spiritual cultivators with shallow cultivation. For the existence of Lin Qingyun and Li Guanqi in the half-step spiritual realm, although not in the blink of an eye, it only took a cup of tea to reach the Moon Hero Peak from Xianfu Peak. Lin Qingyun's mansion is located at the top of the main peak of Yuelu Peak, a courtyard that is neither too big nor too small. There are many flowers and herbs cultivated in the courtyard, and among these flowers and herbs, a round and rolling golden little beast is carefree rolling and immediately pouncing on the colorful butterflies fluttering between the flowers and herbs. The little beast that had just caught a colorful butterfly with its furry paws was about to open its mouth and swallow it. The corner of its eye caught the stream of light flying towards it, cutting through the sky. It quickly let go of the struggling butterfly under its paws and rolled towards the stream of light that had just landed in the courtyard. Master, master, you're back. The golden beast's mouth emitted a childlike sound of milk and milk. When the scene in front of Gu Hongyao became clear again, she saw the round and fluffy golden little beast at a glance. Soon, she heard human words from the other person's mouth, which surprised her a lot. Is this the immortal beast that can speak human words in the fairy tales mentioned in the storybook? Why isn't it as majestic as in the storybook? But it's really cute. At this moment, the golden little beast realized that not only its owner had returned, but also the remaining peak masters of the Yingqiu sect. What surprised it even more was that among the people who arrived at the Moon Egret Peak at this moment, there was also a wooden white elm. Dragon. As soon as the golden beast uttered half a syllable, it received a meaningful glance from the wooden white elm. It quickly swallowed the remaining words, pretending not to know the other person. Lin Qingyun did not notice the abnormality of her spiritual beast, and her thoughts were all on Gu Hongyao beside her at the moment. She nodded perfunctorily at the golden beast, then turned to look at the wooden white elm. Master Mu, could you please wait outside the door with the head senior brother? Senior sister Qing and I will take Hongyao into the room to have a detailed examination of her body. Mu Baiyu naturally knew the truth that men and women are not compatible, so she nodded and asked Lin Qingyun, Qing Baiwei, and Gu Hongyao to walk towards the nearby house. Chapter 6. Gu Yingqiu's Madness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sister Gu, this is the place where the female disciples of the outer sect reside. You can find an empty room to live in. In the lush bamboo forest, a hidden light slowly falls in front of rows of bamboo towers by the stream. After the escape light dissipated, Chen Quan, with an absent-minded expression, reminded the beautiful girl next to him in a light purple palace dress, but with a sinister aura lingering between his eyebrows, of the things to pay attention to after joining the sect. You must take good care of what you received from senior brother one just now. I believe you can understand the importance of the sect Jade pendant without further explanation. After you swallow your spiritual energy and cultivate your spiritual power and enter the spiritual realm, you can activate the sect Jade pendant with your spiritual power, which can be used for long-distance communication with other disciples. Although Jade liquid forging body technique is only an entry-level technique, as long as you diligently cultivate it, Junior Sister Gu, you will also achieve great success in the future. Sister Gu, you have just joined the sect. According to the regulations of our Yingqiu sect, you do not need to take any sect tasks for the first 3 months. You only need to focus on cultivation and quickly bring in energy to condense your own spiritual seed. The elixirs and spiritual stones for the first 3 months of the sect have also been distributed to you. On the 5th day of each month after 3 months, you can go to the medicine refining hall to receive sect benefits belonging to external disciples. If you are unable to go to the medicine refining hall on this day, you can also receive 5 gathering spirit pills and 3 inferior spiritual stones that were not collected last month on the 5th day of next month. If there are still some matters to attend this month, you can also receive 5 gathering spirit pills and 3 inferior spiritual stones that were not collected last month. If you are unable to go, you can continue to receive sect benefits that were not received before the 2nd month, and so on. Gu Yingqiu listened to Chen Quan's advice and felt that the other party was too verbose. She nodded impatiently, indicating that she knew. Really, there are only 5 spirit gathering pills and 3 inferior spirit stones every month. This immortal sect is too stingy, isn't it? You know, my mother has prepared 100 spirit gathering pills for me at once. And what about the Jade liquid forging body skill? It's not as good as the name, Star Falling Moon Cloud Heart technique, that my mother prepared for me. I went crazy to practice this skill, which sounds like I would become a fool. As Chen Quan spoke, he realized that Gu Yingqiu in front of him had not listened carefully to his kind advice, which made him somewhat unhappy and stopped speaking. But in the end, he patiently admonished the young princess who had come from the Cloud Country and the proud daughter Gu Hongyao, who were both from the same country in front of him. The 1st and 15th days of each month are the days for passing on the teachings and dispelling doubts in the sect's preaching hall. If it's not necessary, I hope you can never be absent, junior sister Gu. Thank you for your reminder, senior brother. Gu Yingqiu's tone already had a hint of impatience. Her gaze turned to the rows of bamboo buildings not far away, and she began to ponder which one she should choose to stay in. Chen Quan saw how disrespectful this woman was to him, and his heart couldn't help but become angry. After throwing down the phrase, external disciples need to complete one sect task every month, he directly sacrificed his flying magic weapon and left this place. If Gu Yingqiu had a little respect for him, he might have even given Gu Hongyao some guidance on how to distinguish which sect tasks were relatively easy, but now, finally left. Gu Yingqiu looked in the direction of the escape light and then spat lightly towards the stream. Pooh! A big man is as annoying as a fly. After muttering a few curses in a low voice, she walked towards the rows of bamboo towers not far away, carrying the package containing the entrance benefits for external disciples that she had received from senior brother Wan in Chen Quan's mouth. Ha! The gate of this bamboo tower can't be pushed open. Gu Yingqiu looked at the two-story bamboo building in front of her and saw clothes hanging in the air from the balcony on the second floor. It seems that someone has already moved into this bamboo tower. Humph. If it weren't for you joining the sect early, where would this bamboo tower, which is favored by my princess, be able to get you? Gu Yingqiu cursed softly as she moved her steps towards another bamboo tower that she admired. This time she easily pushed open the courtyard gate of the bamboo tower, and then she pushed open the green door of the bamboo tower. As soon as she pushed open the door, she saw two women who were several years older than her and wearing blue dresses sitting in the lobby on the first floor of the bamboo tower. The two women also noticed the young girl who pushed the door and entered, dressed in elegant and luxurious attire. One of the women looked at Gu Yingqiu and kindly took the initiative to say hello. Junior sister, are you a new disciple of the sect? Coincidentally. Before she could finish speaking, Gu Yingqiu turned around and left, leaving only her dissatisfied murmurs in the hall. What? This bamboo tower is also inhabited by people. Gu Yingqiu quickly pushed all the doors to the remaining bamboo towers, and then her heart was filled with a sense of madness. The reason was that the remaining bamboo towers either couldn't open the doors, or when they opened the doors, she found that there were already people living inside. Damn it! That Chen dares to tease me. Good, good. It must be that little bastard who instructed him. He knows how to seduce men to attack his sister at a young age. Just as her face was contorted with anger, the door of the bamboo tower where she first pushed open slowly opened. The two women in blue dresses were stunned when they saw her. Junior sister, what are you doing walking around all this time? The woman who had just taken the initiative to talk to Gu Yingqiu looked at the pale purple palace dress girl standing on the forest path between two bamboo towers with some confusion. What are you doing? Gu Yingqiu arrogantly glanced at the woman who was speaking. Of course I'm looking for a place to live. Can it be that I'm taking a walk when I'm full? The other woman, who had not spoken before, frowned with displeasure when she saw Gu Yingqiu's arrogance, and said angrily. There are so many empty rooms here, but you haven't moved in yet. Anyone who sees them wouldn't think you're full and taking a walk. What tone are you in? Gu Yingqiu, who was so old, had never been so opposed before. Even though her eyebrows stood on end, the sinister meaning between her eyebrows was evident. Wait a moment. What did you just say? She suddenly seemed to have a reaction and scanned the bamboo buildings around her with an ugly expression. Are you saying that these bamboo buildings are not inhabited by one disciple? Isn't this nonsense? The unhappy woman said sarcastically, who do you think you are? The proud daughter of heaven. If you were truly talented, you would just be an outsider disciple. You. Gu Yingqiu chuckled angrily, you sound like you're not just disciples from outside. We are naturally disciples from outside, but we know how much we weigh. Unlike you, we hold ourselves high. The body of a maid is the fate of a princess. The woman in the green dress mocked Gu Hongyao with a mocking expression on her face. You. Gu Hongyao was almost furious. She never expected that her grand princess would be called the body of a maid. Just as she was about to have a big argument with this woman in a green dress, a thick bell suddenly rang in her ear. Dang! Dang! The thick bell rang 6 times. When the last bell rang, it took Gu Hongyao a while longer to recover from her dizzy state. After regaining her senses, she was shocked to find many women wearing the same style of blue long dresses walking out of the bamboo towers around her. Their faces were full of surprised expressions, looking in the same direction while secretly chatting. What happened? Why did the blue sea bell inside the sect suddenly ring? And it still rang a full 6 times. Is this something big happening? Shouldn't there be any foreign enemies attacking our Yingqiu sect? Don't make a fuss. The sound of a strong enemy attacking the sect is not 6 times. Moreover, with the strength of the sect leaders, there are only a few sects in the entire Kanglan domain that can be on par with us. While the disciples of the outer sect were whispering, Li Guanqi's voice rang in everyone's ears. Yingqiu sect's disciples listen to orders. It's the leader's voice. Just as the outer disciples were causing some commotion when they heard the voice of the leader of the Yingqiu sect, Li Guanqi's voice continued to speak calmly. Although his voice was not loud, it easily suppressed the commotion among the disciples. From then on, Gu Hongyao became the saint of her sect. Gu Hongyao can no longer hear what Li Guanqi, the leader, is saying behind him. When she heard Gu Hongyao's name, her head hummed and she fell into a dizzy state like thunder blowing in her ear. No, it's not true. No, it must just be the same name and surname. Gu Hongyao almost shouted in her heart, as if trying to persuade someone. Yes. It must be the same name and surname. Even if that little bastard has some Xuancai Daoti, she is still just a disabled person. She has not had the opportunity to practice martial arts yet. How can she become a saint of the Immortal Sect? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. It cannot be that little slut. Just as Gu Hongyao had already convinced herself in her heart, a projection of Gu Hongyao's face suddenly appeared in the sky. With the appearance of this projection, something seemed to shatter in her heart, and her originally beautiful face twisted to a visible extent. Who is Gu Hongyao? Why haven't I seen her before? Yeah. I heard that the saint stood out among the 3 candidates for the saint, Su Jianjian, the true disciple of Shueka Peak, Chu Qianyang, the true disciple of Xianfu Peak, and Yang Liujiao, the true disciple of Dongge Peak. 3 saintly candidates. Upon hearing this, Gu Hongyao couldn't help but look at the outer disciple who was speaking. She immediately lowered her gaze and glanced at the antique storage jade bracelet on her wrist. A sinister and vicious smile appeared on her beautiful face. According to the Empress Dowager, she imprisoned a strand of Gu Hongyao's soul in her soul card shortly after she was born. Gu Hongyao. Although I can't deal with you, some people can deal with you. Those 3 candidates for the Holy Maiden must hate you, this guy who occupies the magpie's nest, to the bone, right? Thinking of this, Gu Hongyao put on a sinister smile on her face, with only a hint of madness in her eyes as she walked towards the outer disciple who mentioned the 3 candidates for the saints. Senior sister, I just heard you mention 3 candidates for the Holy Maiden, and I'm very interested in them. Could you please tell me more about them? Hey! Senior sister, do you think your cousin is an inner disciple? She happens to know one of the true disciples. Can this senior sister recommend me to you? I have a good gift to give to you. Chapter 7. Fragrant Soul in Jade. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The window of the room was half open, and the bright sunlight scattered a mottled area inside the room. On the green sandalwood desk near the window, pens, ink, paper, and inkstones were neatly arranged, and an ancient bronze oil lamp was quietly placed in a corner of the desk, with most of the stored oil burning. "Senior Sister Qing, could you please help Hongyao sit down by the bed first?" As Lin Qingyun spoke, he released his hands that supported Gu Hongyao's arms and calmly approached the window, completely closing the half-open window. As Gu Hongyao was helped by Qin Baiwei towards the jade bed carved out of white jade, her gaze also looked curiously at what she considered to be a fairy's boudoir. If she had not known that Lin Qingyun was not an ordinary person long ago, she would not have associated this bedroom with the Immortal Sect under any circumstances. The reason is that this bedroom is very ordinary, not even as luxurious as the palace of the Empress of the Cloud Kingdom. Apart from the green sandalwood desk and the white jade bed, there is only one ancient wooden bookshelf filled with ancient books and not stained with any dust in the room, as well as a screen that separates the space between the jade bed and the desk. She had never seen furniture that often appeared in the bedroom, such as suitcases and mirrors. Qin Baiwei helped Gu Hongyao navigate around the frame, which was adorned with various colored jade and stones. The scene depicted undulating mountains, shrouded in clouds and mist, towering ancient pine trees, and a long scroll of water and clear springs. She then helped Gu Hongyao sit slowly beside the jade bed covered with embroidered sheets. Due to the inconvenience of her legs and feet, Gu Hongyao, although assisted by Qin Baiwei to sit down, accidentally touched the exquisite tassel curtain hanging at the head of the bed, causing it to sway gently, as if whispering. A faint cold and refreshing fragrance lingered at the tip of her nose. Just as she was curious and gently twitched her lower nostrils, trying to find the source of this cold and fresh fragrance, Qin Baiwei's words of concern rang in her ear. "Hongyao, do you feel a bit unwell?" Gu Hongyao shook her head gently, just as she was about to say, "I don't feel uncomfortable anywhere," she suddenly realized that she didn't know how to address the two fairies in front of her, who appeared to be only 2 or 3 years older than her from the outside. After hesitating for a moment, she slowly spoke up and asked softly. "Two seniors, Hongyao still doesn't know how to address you too." Lin Qingyun, who had just closed the window and bypassed the screen, had not yet walked to the jade bed when she heard Gu Hongyao's words. She and Qin Baiwei exchanged a glance, both seeing a hint of melancholy and helplessness in each other's eyes. If Mu Baiyu had not appeared in the end, the two of them would have told Gu Hongyao at this moment that they were each other's masters. Although Mu Baiyu also spoke up and asked Lin Qingyun and the others to teach Gu Hongyao together, how dare they really become Gu Hongyao's masters with each other? "Hongyao, just call me Qing Shishu." Qin Baiwei suppressed her frustration and immediately looked at Lin Qingyun not far away with a pair of beautiful eyes, whispering, "And she is your Lin Shishu." "Uncle Qing, Uncle Lin," Gu Hongyao sweetly opened her mouth. When it comes to the two uncles, Hongyao doesn't feel any discomfort in her body. After hearing Gu Hongyao's address to her, Lin Qingyun fell into silence for a moment. "Mr. Mu is our elder, and theoretically, the disciples he accepts should be called our senior brothers and sisters, even higher in seniority than us. But, sigh." Lin Qingyun only felt that his current state of mind was the most complex since his cultivation. Qin Baiwei's mood was equally complex at the moment, but she quickly suppressed the abnormality in her mood. After all, she and her younger sister Lin Qingyun still have important things to do now. "Hongyao, you haven't felt any discomfort in your body, so naturally it's excellent." Qin Baiwei's gaze fell on the very ordinary dress that Gu Hongyao was wearing. "Uncle Lin and I plan to have a detailed examination of your physical condition. Next, we need you to take off your clothes." "Hey." Gu Hongyao also knew that Qin Baiwei and Lin Qingyun were checking their physical condition in detail for her own good, but her face still couldn't help but show hesitation. "Do you want to take them off?" "There's no need to completely take off, just take off the outer dress and the lewd pants inside." Qin Baiwei smiled. She didn't think much, just simply thought that Gu Hongyao was shy. Okay. Gu Hongyao's fair and slender right index finger lightly hooked the skirt around her waist. After a moment of hesitation, she hooked her finger, causing the skirt to loosen. As the skirt slid off her body, it revealed the white water-patterned obscene clothes and pants worn inside. "Hongyao, your legs and feet are inconvenient. Do you need Uncle Shi's help?" Lin Qingyun's cold voice was rarely tinged with a hint of nervousness. Although she is a woman like Qin Baiwei and Gu Hongyao, when she took the initiative to ask if she needed her help to take off her clothes, she still felt a slight burning on her cheeks. Gu Hongyao originally intended to softly refuse Lin Qingyun's kindness, but she was well aware of her own situation. After hesitating for a while, she lightly tapped her delicate and fair chin, and a rosy glow flew over her fair cheeks. Then, "Could you please trouble Uncle Lin and Uncle Qin?" With the help of Lin Qingyun and Qin Baiwei, Gu Hongyao had to spend nearly a stick of incense to take off her lewd pants on a daily basis, but it only took less than 10 breaths. The girl with slightly red cheeks shyly covered her private parts with her hands, and her large, watery eyes instinctively turned to the side screen due to the shyness in her heart. It seemed that her attention was deeply attracted by the landscape painting above at this moment. As the two of them helped Gu Hongyao take off her intimate lewd pants, Qin Baiwei understood why the young girl in front of her hesitated to ask if she wanted to take off all the clothes she was wearing. After taking off her white denim pants, the girl's legs curved beautifully, and her slender ankles even showed slightly raised veins. The girl's toes are slender and neat, with round and beautiful toes exuding a faint pink hue, as delicate as peach blossoms. The soles of the feet are soft and delicate, as if they were carved from high-quality soft jade by renowned artists. The lines on the instep are beautiful, presenting a wonderful and imaginative curve. But besides that, the skin of the girl's hyperbolic and beautiful legs appeared somewhat rough compared to her feet, and there were large dark accumulations on her thighs. Is it caused by the necrosis of blood and flesh in both legs, blockage of meridians in the legs, and inability to circulate blood? With this in mind, Qin Baiwei's gaze towards the young girl in front of her, whose slender and slightly raised eyelashes were trembling with shyness and inferiority, showed a stronger sense of pity. "Hongyao, there may be a little pain later. I hope you can endure it." Qin Baiwei sat down next to the girl as she spoke. Her weak and boneless little hand gently rested on her leg, trying to avoid the dark spots that made her feel inferior. "Of course, if the pain is really unbearable, you must tell my senior uncle." "Yes, senior uncle." Gu Hongyao's voice is very ethereal. If it weren't for Qin Baiwei and Lin Qingyun's successful spiritual practices, they might have really ignored each other's voices. Lin Qingyun originally wanted to sit next to Gu Hongyao on the other side, but in the end, she was worried that doing the same with Qin Baiwei carefully examining the other party's body would bring unnecessary psychological burden to the shy little guy in front of her. Therefore, she gave up this plan and stood quietly by the jade bed, waiting for her senior sister Qin to examine Gu Hongyao's body. Qin Baiwei quickly finished the test and slowly withdrew her hand from Gu Hongyao's thigh. "Senior sister Qin, how are you?" Lin Qingyun couldn't help but feel a thump as he looked at his senior sister's somewhat serious expression. Gu Hongyao did not feel any pain or even any sensation until his senior uncle withdrew his hand from his leg, and his legs remained numb. Although she had long known that her legs were numb, a hint of disappointment still flowed deep into her dark eyes. "It's okay, I have already left that palace now. Without that snake and scorpion-hearted empress to heal my wounds for me, at most 6 months, I can stand up." Just as she was hesitating in her heart whether to tell her 2 senior uncles about whether she would be able to stand up for at most 6 months, Qin Baiwei with a somewhat heavy expression suddenly turned to look at her and said softly, "Hongyao, I think you've been tired from the bumpy journey. How about you take a break for a while?" After speaking, she didn't wait for Gu Hongyao to nod and agree. Her fair and slender right index finger gently pointed towards her, and the latter suddenly felt a drowsiness surge in her heart. She slowly closed her eyes and leaned her whole body to one side. "Senior sister Qin. What are you doing?" Lin Qingyun quickly stepped forward and helped Gu Hongyao, who had fallen towards the jade bed due to deep sleep. Ah, Qin Baiwei let out a faint sigh when she questioned her junior sister, and then stepped forward to support Gu Hongyao's other arm. Let Hongyao lie down and rest for a while. As for her physical condition, I'll talk about it when I go out. Upon hearing this, Lin Qingyun could only swallow the words that had already reached her lips. She and Qin Baiwei helped Gu Hongyao lie down on the jade bed where she usually rested. Then, she took out a soft brocade quilt from the storage space and gently covered Gu Hongyao, who had already fallen asleep. When she left with Qin Baiwei, she didn't forget to help Gu Hongyao tuck in the quilt corner, and then turned around to keep up with her senior sister's pace. Jia, Li Guanqi and Su Baiyan in the courtyard couldn't wait to look in the direction of the sound when they heard the door open. Before Li Guanqi, the contemporary leader of the Lingqiu sect, could speak, a warm voice rang out from beside him. "Miss Lin, why didn't our disciple come out with you? How is her situation?" "Master Mu, Hongyao is asleep at this moment." Lin Qingyun clearly did not expect Master Mu to naturally refer to Gu Hongyao as his disciple. As for her physical condition, she glanced at Qin Baiwei, who was wearing a water-colored long dress next to her, and whispered, "Let senior sister Qin explain to you." Qin Baiwei saw that the senior Mu Baiyu and her senior brothers were all looking at her, and she organized some language before slowly speaking. "I just carefully examined Hongyao's body and found a gentle force in her legs that automatically repairs damaged flesh and blocked meridians, which is probably the beauty of that Xuancai Daoti body. Even if we let it go, Hongyao's legs can recover like an ordinary person in at most 3 months. Are you sure, junior sister Qin?" Li Guanqi's face was filled with joy after hearing Qin Baiwei's words. "I didn't expect that Hongyao's physical condition was so much better than we expected. He couldn't just let Gu Hongyao Xuancai Daoti automatically repair her damaged legs." Just as he was about to ask his junior sister, what miraculous elixir could cure Gu Hongyao's legs immediately, he saw the other party suddenly sigh. Sigh. Qin Baiwei sighed faintly and immediately revealed her other discovery. But Hongyao's body had another problem. Her 3 souls and 7 souls were not complete, and the refreshing spirit in the 3 souls was not in her body. 3 souls lost 1 soul. Yan Anqing, with white hair, lost his composure upon hearing this. "Did you make a mistake, junior sister Qin? Why doesn't Hongyao look like she lost 1 soul?" Although the refreshing spirit among the 3 souls is not as important as the main soul of the Tire Light, it represents the spiritual intelligence of a living soul. If Hongyao really lost this soul, how could there be no abnormalities? "I'm not quite sure about this." Qin Baiwei's beautiful face was filled with a sense of helplessness, "but I'm pretty sure I'm not mistaken. Perhaps it's also because of Hongyao's Xuancai Daoti that she didn't suffer much after losing her soul." When Lin Qingyun heard Qin Baiwei say that Gu Hongyao's 3 souls and 7 souls were not complete, although he did not lose his composure like his senior brother, his gaze suddenly became a bit cold. The exquisitely shaped long sword carried behind him also trembled faintly in its sheath. Based on our understanding of the Xuancai Daoti, Qin Ya's speculation is not without reason. Mu Baiyu, who had always been gentle, now put away the seemingly warm smile on her lips. But the reason why Hongyao was not affected too much is that she lost her Shuangling soul, which was not too far away from her. As Mu Baiyu spoke, she looked towards the sky. He looked at the 3 purple escape lights dragging their tails in the blue sky, and with a wave of his sleeve robe, he immediately transferred the 3 escape lights that were still far away to the courtyard. After the escape light dissipated, the figures of 4 young girls appeared in the eyes of Li Guanqi and others. Jian Jian. Qin Baiwei looked at the delicate young girl in a pink dress, as if she could be blown down by a strong wind. A hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. "How could you be here?" Disciple Su Jianjian pays respects to the master. Su Jianjian, who had regained her composure, first respectfully saluted Qin Baiwei as a disciple. It was then that she noticed that besides her master and Lin Qingyun, the leader of the Moon Egret Peak, the other peak leaders and leaders were all here. She quickly saluted them one by one. Disciple Su Jianjian pays respects to the leader, pays respects to Master Lin, pays respects. After bowing as a disciple to Mu Baiyu, she paused. She had never seen Mu Baiyu before, but she also knew that this white-clad man who could be with her master and sect leader could never be an ordinary person. "You guys just call me Uncle Mu," Mu Baiyu said as her gaze turned to Yang Liujiao in a green lotus dress. To be precise, it was the purple dress girl in Yang Liujiao's hand that she was carrying like a bundle. Li Guanqi waited for Yang Liujiao and Chu Qianyang to also bow to them as disciples before looking at his disciple and asking. "Qianyang, how did the three of you appear here? Also, Yang, why are you holding a mortal in your hand?" Report to Master, the reason why the disciples appeared here with Yang and Su is because the three disciples heard your message just now. My recent transmission. Li Guanqi suddenly understood something, and a corner of his eye glanced at the wooden white elm that seemed to be pondering behind the ordinary girl held by Yang Liujiao. He then looked at his disciple, who was dressed in red and blood-like clothes, and his face darkened as he slowly said. "What's wrong? Qianyang, are you unhappy about your junior sister Gu serving as the sect saint?" Chu Qianyang, dressed in blood-like red clothes and with an incredibly beautiful face, couldn't help but be stunned when she heard her master's words. She quickly spoke up. "Report to Master, I dare not be displeased about this." Although she had never met Gu Hongyao before, this was her true words. As she spoke, she secretly cast a glance at Yang Liujiao, signaling that she should quickly help her break free. As Yang Liujiao, with a beautiful face, casually threw the girl in the purple dress she was holding onto the ground, she quickly spoke up to help Chu Qianyang out of the situation. "Report to the sect leader, the three disciples have never had any dissatisfaction with your decision. The reason why the disciples appeared here is because this self-proclaimed saint sister, Princess Gu Yingqiu from the Cloud Country, approached us." She paused for a moment and took out a red jade plaque that was as red as blood from the storage jade bracelet. Before Yang Liujiao could offer this red jade plaque to the head of her own sect, she felt a light touch in her hand. The jade plaque flew towards Mu Baiyu, who claimed to be their master Mu, as if it was being pulled by an invisible force. Before Yang Liujiao could remove the red jade plaque from the storage jade bracelet, Mu Baiyu felt the breath of Gu Hongyao emanating from her storage jade bracelet. Although he realized that the girl in front of him had no hostility towards his disciple, he couldn't help but grasp the red jade plaque in his own hands as soon as the other person took it out. Soul-locking jade. He looked at the faint trace of the young girl's soul in his jade plaque, and immediately turned his gaze to Gu Yingqiu, who had been cast an immobilization spell and was thrown on the ground like garbage by someone. He already had some understanding in his heart about this matter, but he slowly spoke up. "Yang, let's talk about it and see what's going on." Chapter 8. Attitudes of True Transmission Disciples. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The path paved with bluestone is winding and winding, with green bamboo on both sides, and a gentle breeze brushing past. The bamboo leaves sway and make a rustling sound. The courtyard is surrounded by exquisite corridors, with high eaves and small jade ornaments hanging on them. As they sway in the wind, they emit a clear and ethereal sound. The wisteria winds around the corridor, with flowers blooming and falling, emitting a faint fragrance. A corner of the courtyard features a towering rockery with rugged rocks. A clear spring pours down from the top of the rockery and joins a small pool at the foot of the mountain. The pool water is clear to the bottom, and several swimming fish swim freely in the water, occasionally jumping out of the water and causing ripples in circles. The pavilion by the pool has green tiles and white columns, and the stone tables and benches in the pavilion seem to be completely natural, with no visible traces of carving. The three young girls sitting around the stone table were of similar ages. As they chatted, it was not difficult to see that their relationship was very close through their playful expressions. "Jian, it's all right now. We don't have to fight for the position of the saint anymore." Chu Qianyang, dressed in red clothes, looked at the delicate and charming girl sitting next to her with a faint smile. "Sister Chu, please don't tease me." Su Jianjian's eyes, which looked as delicate as willow catkins in the wind, flashed with a hint of helplessness. "Sister Chu, I never thought of competing with you and Sister Yang for the position of the holy lady of this sect. Jian Jian, you never thought about competing with others for this, and Qianyang and I naturally know it." Yang Liujiao, who was beautiful and dressed in a lotus blue dress, smiled and said, "But those inner disciples in the sect don't think so. However, this is also normal. After all, they have always believed that there is a rift between me, Sister Yang, you, and Jian Jian." Chu Qianyang seemed to have thought of something, and then he smiled and said, "The position of the saint has been decided now. Perhaps those inner and outer disciples all agree that the three of us will be hostile towards this new saint. When will they finally understand the true meaning of the sect, and what does the term senior brother, senior sister, junior sister represent? If they understand these principles, how could they still be just external disciples and internal disciples?" Yang Liujiao shook her head, with a hint of emotion in her words. "It seems that there is no disciple named Gu Hongyao among us authentic disciples, right?" Su Jianjian looked at her two senior sisters curiously. "Sister Chu and Sister Yang, you two have better social connections in the sect than my younger sister. I wonder if you have any understanding of the identity of this new saint. As far as I know, there are 3 disciples of the inner sect surnamed Gu, but they are all male disciples." As Yang Liujiao spoke, a butterfly the size of a palm flew in from outside the courtyard, waving its wings and arriving in the pavilion. She lifted her right hand lightly to let the butterfly land in her palm. As soon as the butterfly landed in Yang Liujiao's fair and soft palm, it turned into a white jade plaque. She injected a wisp of spiritual power into the white jade plaque in her hand, and a female voice slowly sounded from the plaque. "Inner disciple Duan Xinmei has something important to ask to see senior sister Yang." "Duan Xinmei?" Yang Liujiao furrowed her eyebrows and pondered for a moment before recalling that she seemed to have asked this person about the news of Frost Du Jade not long ago. Apart from that, the two had no interaction. Just as she was about to tell this person that she was currently unavailable, Chu Qianyang beside her seemed to see her plan and began to persuade. "Sister Yang, since you're also free at the moment, why don't you let this inner disciple in and see if she has anything important to tell you, so that she won't disturb you again in the future?" Yang Liujiao thought for a moment and felt that Chu Qianyang's words made some sense. She then gently threw it upwards, and the jade plaque transformed into a butterfly the size of a palm again, flapping its wings and flying towards the outside of the courtyard. "Come on in." As the sound-transmitting butterfly transformed by the jade plaque flew over the walls of the courtyard, waves of ripples immediately formed in the previously normal space above. As the ripples dissipate, the transmitting butterfly disappears without a trace. Yang Liujiao and the other 3 waited in the pavilion for a moment, and then heard a rapid sound of footsteps approaching towards the direction of the pavilion. Yang Liujiao looked outside the pavilion and immediately saw Duan Xinmei, who had only met her once, as well as the young girl wearing a purple palace dress following her. "Miss Duan, do you have anything important to say to me?" From her appearance, Duan Xinmei, who appeared to be at least 5 years older than Yang Liujiao and others, did not speak after hearing Yang Liujiao's words. Instead, she turned her gaze to Gu Hongyao who had been brought by her. Gu Hongyao quickly took a step forward upon seeing the situation, and her words were full of flattery as she spoke. "Our Lady." "Stop. I'm not a saint," "You called the wrong person." Yang Liujiao frowned slightly and interrupted Gu Hongyao words. "Who are you?" Gu Hongyao saw that Yang Liujiao's reaction was different from what she had expected, and a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. Fortunately, before she followed Duan Xinmei here, she knew that the other party had brought her to meet Yang Liujiao, a disciple of the true lineage of Danfeng, one of the 3 saintly female candidates. She quickly changed her mind. "If you don't mind, senior sister Yang, I am a disciple who just started today. My surname is Gu and my name is Yingqiu. If you don't mind, just call me Yingqiu. Surname Gu. Yang Liujiao and Su Jianjian exchanged a glance, and there were already some speculations in their hearts. She looked at Gu Yingqiu standing under the steps outside the pavilion and calmly asked. What is your relationship with Gu Hongyao? Gu Hongyao is my younger sister, and we all come from the Cloud Country. Seeing that Yang Liujiao had no expression on her face, Gu Yingqiu instinctively thought that she was waiting for her to take the initiative to draw a line with Gu Hongyao. She quickly spoke up and said, but Yang's senior sister, don't worry, although we are half-sisters, we are not familiar with each other and our relationship is not good. After all, she is just a shameless lowly woman who seduced my father, the little slut born to her. Su Jianjian and Chu Qianyang couldn't help but frown when they heard Gu Yingqiu's unpleasant words. But under Yang Liujiao's gaze, neither of them spoke. Gu Yingqiu naturally noticed Su Jianjian and Chu Qianyang in the pavilion, but she did not carefully consider each other's identities. She only regarded each other as inner disciples who had a good relationship with Yang Liujiao, just like Duan Xinmei who brought her. The inner senior sister in the pink dress. Damn it, she looks soft and weak like that little slut, but she also has an indescribable tenacity. Although Su Jianjian and Gu Hongyao didn't look the same, Gu Yingqiu didn't know why. Seeing each other's soft and resilient appearance, her heart was filled with disgust. She suppressed her inexplicable disgust toward Su Jianjian in her heart and looked at Yang Liujiao, who still had no change in expression. Her words were full of flattery. Yang's senior sister, based on my understanding of that little slut, the sect leader must have made a mistake in order for her to become the saint of our sect. From senior sister's perspective, only you are qualified to hold the position of saint of Lingyi sect, and the other two senior sisters cannot be compared to you. Chu, senior sister from Xianfu Peak. Su, senior sister from Shueka Peak. How could they both appear here? Duan Xinmei was greatly shocked and she saw Chu Qianyang and Su Jianjian also appearing here. What's going on? Aren't the three of them competitors competing for the position of the Virgin Mary? Shouldn't they start arguing as soon as they meet? How could they coexist so harmoniously? Due to the shock in her heart, before she could even remind Gu Yingqiu of the identities of the other two girls in the pavilion, she had already heard derogatory words from the latter about Chu Qianyang and Su Jianjian, which made her break out in a cold sweat. Duan Xinmei was about to quietly remind Gu Yingqiu that she had said the wrong thing, but soon realized that her mouth was not under her control. No matter how anxious she was to speak, her mouth remained tightly closed, unable to make any sound. What's going on? Duan Xinmei was extremely frightened in her heart. She found herself not only unable to speak, but also devoid of control over her limbs, as if she had been silently cast an immobilization spell. Yang Liujiao noticed that Chu Qianyang had already stood up and walked towards her. She naturally lowered her right hand on one side of her body and gently pressed it down, indicating that the latter would temporarily suppress the anger in her heart. The young girl in the green dress looked at Gu Yingqiu, who had a flattering expression under the steps, and the sinister meaning lingering between her eyebrows. A playful smile couldn't help but linger on her lips. What are you telling me about these things? The decision of the sect leader is not something that our disciples and I can criticize on our own. Is it possible that you are trying to tell me that you have a way to make Gu Hongyao refuse the position of saint herself? Senior sister Yang's eyes are as bright as a torch. Gu Yingqiu hesitated for a moment, then took off the quaint jade bracelet on her wrist. Junior sister, I do have a way to make Gu Hongyao refuse the position of saint herself. This senior sister is also a disciple of the Immortal Sect and one of the most promising candidates to become a saint in the past. She shouldn't be greedy for the jade bracelet stored by a small external disciple of mine, right? Gu Yingqiu hesitated for a while, then took a few steps up the stairs and handed the jade bracelet to Yang Liujiao. There is a soul card in junior sister's storage jade bracelet, which detains a strand of Gu Hongyao's soul. With this soul card in hand, the little slut naturally has to obey your orders, senior sister Yang. Why don't you worry about becoming a sect saint when the time comes? Yang Liujiao was still puzzled by Gu Hongyao behavior of handing her a storage jade bracelet, and soon she heard the other person's words. She lowered her gaze and looked at the jade bracelet in her hand. After a while, she slowly lifted her head, and with a hint of anger in her beautiful eyes, she looked at the girl in front of her in a luxurious palace dress. The soul card that binds people's souls. Where did you get this kind of thing? Gu Hongyao did not notice the anger hidden deep in Yang Liujiao's eyes. She only assumed that the true disciple in front of her was curious, so she answered truthfully. It's my mother's queen refining. Before she could finish speaking, she saw the red-clad girl in the pavilion gently lift her right hand, her fair and jade-like index finger lightly pointing towards her through the air. Soon, she was shocked to find that she had lost control of herself. It's said that tiger poison doesn't even eat children. Unexpectedly, as Gu Hongyao's sister, she did something worse than her mother to treat Gu Hongyao like a beast. Su Jianjian looked at Chu Qianyang with an angry expression and said softly. Sister Chu, please calm down first. There's no need to anger yourself for this kind of popularity. I apologize for Gu Hongyao, that holy female junior sister. Chu Qianyang's charming little face was now filled with anger. I know, I'm also very angry about this. Su Jianjian paused for a moment and looked at Yang Liujiao. But what we need to do now is to quickly find the leader and hand over the soul card that is holding Gu Hongyao's soul to them, so that the soul of this newly ordained holy sister can return to her body as soon as possible. Let's go to Xianfu Peak to find the leader. Yang Liujiao also knew that leaving her soul for too long would cause damage to her body, so she put away the jade bracelet in her hand and carried the immobilized Gu Hongyao in her hand like a chicken. As for junior sister Duan, Qianyang, could you please bring her along and untie her immobilization spell when you leave here? Report to the sect leader, master, and fellow martial uncles. That's the whole story behind this matter. Ang Liujiao's expression was very respectful. I went to Xianfu Peak with Chu and Su, and learned from Elder Qin that you were at Yuelu Peak, so we immediately arrived here. Humph, okay. After listening to Yang Liujiao's story, Yan Anqing, with white hair and gray hair, looked at Gu Hongyao on the ground, who was immobilized by the immobilization spell and was so angry that she even pinched off one of her beard. This woman has such a malicious heart at a young age. If we let her continue to grow, we cannot say what kind of calamity she will become. Today, I will eliminate the harm for the people. Mu Baiyu watched as Yan Anqing walked towards Gu Hongyao with an angry expression on her face, facing the soil, and slowly spoke up. Yan, you slapped her to death now, isn't it too cheap for her? Yan Anqing stopped and turned to look at Mu Baiyu. He suppressed his anger and respectfully asked. Master Mu, what do you mean? Senior Mu. Upon hearing this, Yang Liujiao's heart moved and she secretly looked at the wooden white elm, dressed in white clothes and with a woman-like face, her heart filled with doubts. What is the origin of this Mu Shishu? He asked us to call him Mu Shishu, but the master and leader also called him Mu Senior, and they were very respectful to him. What should this woman do in the end? Let's wait for Hongyao to wake up and ask her before making a decision. After speaking, Mu Baiyu looked at Qin Baiwei and Lin Qingyun, and after some thought, she still felt a bit uneasy as she handed over the soul card that contained her disciple's soul to someone else. Master Mu, do you want this? Qin Baiwei saw Mu Baiyu taking steps towards the bedroom where Gu Hongyao was sleeping, and quickly took a few steps to block the other person's progress. I am naturally going to personally preside over the soul returning ceremony of Hongyao. Mu Baiyu was puzzled as to why Qin Baiwei would stop her from entering the bedroom. Although it is said that men and women do not receive each other, he only uses the resurrection spell, rather than personally checking Gu Hongyao's physical condition as before. Chapter 9. Gu Hongyao Strange Road. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wu. Where am I? Gu Hongyao slowly opened her eyes and looked at the unfamiliar ceiling in front of her. Her black and white eyes were filled with a hint of haziness from waking up. A gentle breeze blew by, and the crisp ding-dong sound caused by the collision of jade and stones dispelled the remaining drowsiness in her mind. Suddenly, she remembered being in the boudoir of Master Lin at the moment. "Tu Er, are you awake?" A warm male voice sounded from the room. "Tu Er. Are you talking about me?" A hint of confusion flashed in Gu Hongyao's eyes. Before she could even think about how she had a master before formally becoming a disciple, she suddenly remembered something very important. Just now, when the senior martial uncle was checking my body, he asked me to take off my clothes and even the dirty pants inside. Afterwards, I fell asleep for some reason and had not had time to put on my clothes again. As soon as she thought of this, she felt her heart pounding, almost about to burst out of her chest. Ro Shun Jin's small hand under her quickly leaned under her body, and her fingertips immediately touched the touch of the fabric. "Did Uncle Qing and the others help me put it on when I fell asleep?" Although Gu Hongyao was still a bit shy in her heart, she breathed a sigh of relief. After all, Lin Qingyun, Qin Baiwei, and she are both women, while the master who appeared in the room calling his disciple was actually a man. The mismatch between men and women. Although it has not yet reached this level and some brocade has been concealed, if, as she had initially worried, the clothes she had taken off had not been put back on, she would feel too embarrassed at this moment. "Tu Er, why is your face so red? But what's wrong with your body?" Mu Baiyu noticed that Gu Hongyao's cheeks suddenly turned red, and she took a few steps towards the bedside with concern. Could it be that there was a mistake in the soul-returning spell just now? Although it has been thousands of years since this seat last cast this spell, with the path of this seat, such a mistake should not have occurred. Mu Baiyu did not notice that as she approached, Gu Hongyao on the jade bed stiffened slightly. Gu Hongyao twisted her small head somewhat stiffly and looked towards the bedside. She immediately noticed that the master who called her disciple was Mu Baiyu, who was respectfully referred to as Senior Mu by Qin Baiwei and others. "Returning teacher, teacher." She looked at the woman-like face of the other person for a moment, hesitated, and finally succeeded in saying that title. "Master." I didn't feel any discomfort. After speaking, she struggled to sit up from the jade bed. Although she felt confused about being taken as an apprentice by the other party at this moment, she knew that if her master stood by and her apprentice still lay down, it would be a bit disrespectful. However, before she could even struggle to sit up, she saw a pristine, snowy corner of her sleeve brushing past her eyes. Then, she felt a pair of strong and gentle hands pressing down on her shoulder blades, pushing herself back onto the jade bed. "Nonsense." Mu Baiyu frowned slightly. "Your legs and feet are inconvenient, my disciple. The soul that has been missing for a long time has just returned to its body. Don't make any violent moves. Just lie quietly and cultivate yourself. However, if you stand still while Hongyao is lying down, it would be disrespectful and disrespectful." Gu Hongyao looked at Mu Baiyu with a frown and timidly said the reason why she struggled to sit up just now. "If you don't provoke me. I'm angry, that's the best way to respect my teacher." Mu Baiyu confirmed that his disciple had heard his words before slowly retracting his hand. At this moment, Gu Hongyao only felt a mix of emotions in her heart, with inexplicable doubts from a master. There is also the shyness of sharing a room with the opposite sex. I also felt touched by the other person's genuine concern for me, teacher, master. She spent some time digesting the complex emotions in her heart, then recalled what her master had just said, which made her slender and beautiful willow eyebrows furrow together. "You just said that the soul that Hongyao has been missing for a long time has just returned to her body. What does this mean?" Upon hearing Gu Hongyao's doubts, Mu Baiyu pondered for a moment and then told her disciple about Gu Yingqiu's possession of a soul card, which contained Xuangling, one of her 3 souls, who was being detained. Oh, it turns out that over the years, besides being disabled in both legs, I have also lost a soul. Gu Hongyao Jin's small hands, which were lowered, clenched tightly together at some point. She thought she already knew a lot about the malice of Gu Yingqiu, Wei Man, and others, but to her surprise, the malice of their hearts far exceeded her imagination. Mu Baiyu also saw the anger in the eyes of her disciple. He looked towards the direction of the bedroom door, his voice still warm and warm. Your senior sister Chu and the others have brought Gu Yingqiu, and she is lying outside the door right now. I don't know what you want to do with her, disciple. How to deal with Gu Yingqiu? Gu Hongyao couldn't help but ponder upon hearing her master's words. It's not that she cares about blood ties. Whether it was Gu Yingqiu, Wei Man, or his biological father Gu Chuchao, they never considered the blood relationship between the two sides when bullying and ignoring themselves. Gu Hongyao doesn't want to do this kind of thing, nor will she do it. At this moment, she felt conflicted that if she told her master to give Gu Yingqiu a direct death, it would be a bit too cheap compared to the humiliation she had suffered in recent years, but if we only leave the other person with one breath and let them live. The mysteries of immortal magic in this world are so profound that even if one lacks a soul and has legs disabled, they can be cured, and it is difficult to guarantee that there will be no immortal magic that can restore the other person as usual. Although Gu Yingqiu's qualifications are mediocre, Gu Hongyao cannot determine whether the other party will receive the chance encounter of immortality in the future. Currently, both sides are relentless enemies, and for the enemy, Gu Hongyao has thought about it for a long time, thinking that it is best to eradicate them. At this moment, Gu Hongyao's gaze no longer hesitated. Mu Baiyu has been paying attention to the changes in the eyes of her disciple. At this moment, seeing that the other person's eyes are firm, she slowly spoke up and asked. Tuer, have you already made a decision in your heart? Gu Hongyao nodded lightly, but there was still some concern in her heart. She was worried that if she told her master that she wanted to kill Gu Yingqiu, the other person might feel that she didn't care about blood ties and was too indifferent. But in the end, she decided that even if her master would be disappointed with her, she still had to express her true thoughts. If possible, I would like to kill Gu Yingqiu. Oh. Mu Baiyu heard her disciple's answer and asked with great interest, then Gu Yingqiu claimed to be your sister to you, senior sister Chu, and they share the same bloodline as you. In this situation, do you also want to kill her quickly? It's not that I want to kill her quickly, but that she and her mother never let me go. Gu Hongyao's eyes drooped slightly, and her voice tinged with a hint of sadness. Since I remember, I have been disabled. But I won't always be disabled because there is an inexplicable force in my body helping me repair my damaged legs. But every time I'm about to stand up again, Empress Wei Manwei, Gu Yingqiu's biological mother, will appear, shattering the inexplicable force in my body, making me always a person with legs disabled. To outsiders, she is kind-hearted and using her spiritual power to help me warm up my legs, but I don't appreciate her and keep giving her a cold eye. As soon as she spoke, Gu Hongyao couldn't help but tell Mu Baiyu about all her experiences over the years. Mu Baiyu listened quietly to the experiences of her disciple over the years. When she heard the other party say that she had known for a long time that the reason why Gu Yingqiu and her daughter did not kill her was because she had always been in the palace, and after all, she had the blood of the royal family flowing through her body. If she really died inexplicably in the palace, it would be an indelible shame for the royal family, and she cast a ray of admiration at her. Tuer, I didn't expect you to be so intelligent at a young age that you could discover the essence of this matter on your own. Mu Baiyu smiled as she looked at Gu Hongyao's somewhat uneasy expression. Tuer, are you worried that when I hear that your treatment of Gu Yingqiu is to kill him, I will think that you are a person with a cold nature? Master, how do you know what the disciple is thinking? Gu Hongyao was surprised when she heard her master's words. Mu Baiyu did not answer how Gu Hongyao knew what the other person was thinking, but smiled and spoke up. Tuer, what is the first rule of the Yingqiu sect's teachings? I don't know, Gu Hongyao shook her head gently. If a person doesn't offend me, I won't offend them." Mu Baiyu paused for a moment and looked at Gu Hongyao with a deep meaning in her eyes. "But if a person offends me, they will destroy everyone. Of course, if you are really the kind of person who indiscriminately kills innocent people in the future, I will take action to clean up the door." Is Gu Yingqiu innocent? From what Gu Hongyao knows, even without mentioning her own situation, there are no fewer than 10 truly innocent palace maids who die and injure each other's hands every year. As for Empress Wei Manwei, she is not an innocent person. "My disciple, please continue to lie down and rest for a while," Mu Baiyu said as she wanted to turn around and leave. "Your sect leader and martial uncle are still waiting in the courtyard. I will inform them of the decision to deal with Gu Yingqiu." Gu Hongyao looked at Mu Baiyu, who had turned around and left, as her figure crossed the screen. After hesitating for a while, she still spoke softly and called out to the other person. "Master." "Yes, could you please take your disciple out with you?" As Gu Hongyao spoke, Mu Baiyu had already slowed down her pace. He turned to look at Gu Hongyao, who was slowly sitting up with his palms supporting the jade bed, and after some thought, nodded. "Okay, but disciple, please wait a moment." After speaking, he turned around and left the bedroom. In no time, Qin Baiwei pushed open the door of the bedroom and walked in. Gu Hongyao looked at Qin Baiwei, who pushed the door in and sweetly called out to her, "Master Qin." Qin Baiwei looked at Gu Hongyao, who had already sat up with her back against the bedside, and a heartfelt smile couldn't help but fill her lips. "Hongyao, do you feel any discomfort?" "Thank you for Uncle Qing's concern." Gu Hongyao slowly got out of bed with the help of Qin Baiwei. Hongyao didn't feel any discomfort in her body. "That's good." Qin Baiwei helped Gu Hongyao walk slowly towards the outside, while also using spiritual power to investigate the other person's physical condition. After confirming that the other person's body was not uncomfortable, she finally breathed a complete sigh of relief. Jiya, as the bedroom door reopened, the scenery in the courtyard once again caught Gu Hongyao's eye. The sudden bright sunshine made her feel a little uncomfortable, and she instinctively narrowed her eyes slightly. It took her a while to recover as usual. As her vision returned to normal, she immediately saw Gu Yingqiu lying face down between the flowers and plants not far away. Gu Hongyao's gaze paused for a moment on the girl in the purple luxurious palace dress, and then moved away to look at the young man in white in the courtyard, respectfully calling out, "Master." She saw that Mu Baiyu nodded lightly to her without hesitation, and then her gaze turned to Li Guanqi, the leader of the Yingqiu sect, and others beside Mu Baiyu. "Master, Uncle Lin, Uncle Su. Could you please worry about and care about Hongyao?" "What are you saying, Hongyao? If we martial uncles don't care about your nephews, how can we deserve to be called martial uncles by you?" Yan Anqing, with gray hair, said dismissively. Gu Hongyao could only respond with a smiling face to what Yan Shishu had said. She immediately noticed the young Liujiao 3 women who looked similar in age to her not far away, which made her emotions at this moment very emotional. "Gu Yingqiu is my half-sister, and I have never thought of competing with her for anything, but she always wants to get rid of me quickly. And senior sister Chu and senior sister Su should have become the saints of the Yingqiu sect. After my master asked me to become the saints of the Yingqiu sect, they not only did not envy and dislike me, the new disciple who snatched their position, but also very much defended me." Chu Qianyang saw that Gu Hongyao was looking at her and playfully blinked at her. Soon, she noticed the other person's obviously inconvenient legs, which made her deep eyes tinged with pity. "Tuer, do you need my teacher's help to explain how to deal with Gu Yingqiu's decision?" The warm voice of her master pulled Gu Hongyao's thoughts back to reality. The girl gently shook her head and glanced at Gu Yingqiu, who looked a bit disheveled and covered in dirt on her luxurious palace skirt. She then turned to Li Guanqi and others. "Master, sect leader, and fellow martial uncles, since you are willing to inquire about Hongyao's attitude, Hongyao hopes to directly grant Gu Yingqiu the death." Facing the soil, Gu Yingqiu, who was in darkness in front of her, immediately broke out in a cold sweat when she heard Gu Hongyao's words. She thought of running away, wanting to scream and curse loudly, but because she had been cast an immobilization spell, she could only wait quietly like a stone statue for the footsteps of death to gradually approach. As soon as Gu Yingqiu entered the sect, she intended to incite her true disciples to use evil methods of imprisoning their souls to deal with another true disciple. Her malicious heart can be seen. Since you have made up your mind to annihilate your family with righteousness, Hongyao, you will not have any objections from the senior uncle and others. Chapter 10. Wei Man's Restless Mind. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the beginning of the palace lanterns, the flames flickered, illuminating every corner of the palace. The palace maids and eunuchs slowly walked through the long corridor holding lanterns, and the light emitted by the lanterns cast their shadows on the ground. Bang bang. A crisp sound shattered the tranquility of the palace at night. Several palace maids who arrived here slowed down their steps upon hearing the sound, looked up in the direction of the sound, and immediately they all lowered their heads and quickly left the place. The reason is that the crisp sound of objects shattering came from the current queen's bedroom. Useless waste. Wei Man, who had already changed his phoenix robe, looked at the trembling palace maid kneeling beside the broken porcelain, and a hint of anger climbed onto her still bright and charming face. Empress Dowager, calm down. The palace maid in a light green dress trembled all over and kept kowtowing to Wei Man. I understand my mistake, and I hope Empress Dowager can forgive me. I don't know if it was due to excessive force, or if there were still a lot of porcelain shards left on the ground in front of her. Soon, the smooth forehead of the palace maid oozed with crimson blood. Wen Yuan, take her down. Wei Man, who had changed into a purple Yongui robe under the attendance of the palace maid, never looked at the palace maid again from beginning to end. Yes, Empress Dowager. One of the palace maids, after serving Wei Man, bowed to her master and then turned to walk towards the palace maid who was still kowtowing. The palace maid who broke the vase dared not stand up and kept kowtowing in the direction of Wei Man. She listened to the footsteps getting closer and closer, and her despair grew stronger in her heart. Empress, I understand my mistake. Please spare me this time. Wen Yuan, why is the dormitory in this palace so noisy today? Wen Yuan, walking towards the palace maid kneeling on the ground, paused slightly upon hearing this and then quickened her pace. Returning to Empress Dowager, do you still feel a bit noisy now? As she spoke, she grabbed the maid's cheek kneeling on the ground with her left hand, and a dagger flickering with cold light slipped from her sleeve into her right hand. The palace maid kneeling on the ground instinctively wanted to resist, but before she could take action, she felt a sharp pain coming from her mouth. She wanted to speak out to alleviate the severe pain, but was tightly pinched by Wen Yuan on her cheek, unable to exhale the pain. At this moment, it's okay. Wei Man looked at the palace maid's bleeding mouth, with a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. The other palace maids in the dormitory stood aside and watched the scene unfold, their already numb hearts still filled with sadness. This scene has happened more than once, but they can still only watch helplessly. The only thing they can do is pray to the heavens in their hearts that this scene will not happen to themselves, and that they will not make the Empress angry. The Emperor has arrived. A sharp voice rang out from outside the sleeping palace. Wei Man glanced at his close palace maid Wen Yuan, who understood and dragged the tongue-cut palace maid through the secret door of the Empress's dormitory. The maidservant kowtowed to the Emperor, "Long live the Emperor, long live the Emperor." The palace maids in the dormitory quickly knelt down on the ground when the gate was opened, only to see a golden dragon robe walking past them. I respectfully welcome the Holy Emperor. Wei Man bowed respectfully to Gu Chao, who suddenly appeared here. Your Majesty, how come you have time to come to my Changqiu palace today? Ha ha ha, Gu Chao could be said to be in high spirits at this moment. Manner, why do you need so much courtesy? As he spoke, he hugged Wei Man, who still had the charm in front of him, in his arms. Wei Man gave a glance to another palace maid who was close to him, and soon the latter wisely led the other palace maids in the dormitory out. "Your Majesty, are you drunk?" Wei Man sniffed the strong alcohol smell on Gu Chuchao's body and furrowed his brow slightly. I'm not drunk, Gu Chuchao waved his hand and took Wei Man to the throne carved with colorful phoenixes. "Today is my day of great joy. Can't we have a drink with those trusted ministers? On a day of great joy." Wei Man guessed why Gu Chuchao was so happy, which made a hint of melancholy flash in her eyes. Yes, on the day of great joy, perhaps under the influence of the fine wine, Gu Chuchao did not notice that his empress's expression was somewhat unusual at the moment. "My two daughters were both adopted as disciples by the Immortal Sect emissaries. Isn't this a day of great joy?" "It's indeed a day of great joy," Wei Man forced out a smile. "If that little slut died on the way to the Immortal Gate, then today would really be a day of great joy." When Wei Man thought of the daylight, his heart couldn't help but be filled with flames. Humph. What kind of Xuancai Daoti? Even if that little slut's talent is outstanding, as long as Yingqiu makes good use of that soul card, that little slut can only serve Yingqiu as a cow, a horse, or a slave. Manner. What's wrong with you? Gu Chuchao looked at Wei Man, who suddenly covered his chest in his arms, and the remaining drunkenness suddenly cleared up half of his mind. "No, it's nothing," Wei Man forced out a smile. "I just suddenly felt a little uneasy, maybe it's because my old illness has broken out again." Upon hearing her words, Gu Chuchao couldn't help but recall the actions taken by the other party over the years as a spiritual cultivator to help him eliminate heretics and consolidate the throne. A touch of heartache appeared on his face. "Over the years, I have suffered a lot from you, Manner. I owe you too much. Your Majesty, if you say that again, I will be angry." Wei Man lay quietly in Gu Chuchao's arms, looking at him with a hint of resentment in his eyes. Okay, I won't say anything, Gu Chuchao laughed at the words. He looked at Wei Man, who was lying in his arms with a cute little bird, and suddenly felt a little thirsty. "Your Majesty!" Wei Man exclaimed in surprise, but did not stop the big hand that had penetrated his clothes. As she murmured softly, she couldn't help but feel anxious in her heart. How could I have inexplicable palpitations in this palace? Is it because Yingqiu had an accident? Gu Yingqiu has died. Gu Hongyao watched as the green flame that popped out of Yan Anqing's fingertips lightly landed on Gu Yingqiu's body. The seemingly effortless flame turned into a raging fire in an instant. As if the girl in the purple dress had already been splashed with lamp oil. In less than 10 breaths, Gu Yingqiu turned into a wisp of green smoke and dissipated in this world, not even leaving a handful of ashes behind. Gu Hongyao looked at Gu Yingqiu, who had turned into a wisp of green smoke, without any fluctuation in her heart. There is no emotion of emotion, nor the confusion of revenge. She knew that her animosity with Gu Hongyao's mother and daughter was far from over, and that Empress Wei Manwei was still alive and well. For some reason, although there was no wind at this moment, Gu Hongyao couldn't help but feel a chill invading her bone marrow. Ha! Mu Baiyu looked at his disciple's suddenly pale face, lifted his right hand and gently grabbed it forward. A purple light with a red light was then grabbed out of Gu Hongyao's body. The light ball kept bouncing in the hands of the young man in white, as if trying to break free from his hands. "Master, is this?" Gu Hongyao no longer felt cold at this moment. She looked at the bouncing light in her master's hand and had a vague guess in her heart. The soul of that little girl just now. Mu Baiyu answered her disciple's doubts gently in her voice. This woman really has a malicious heart. Yan Anqing's old face was full of anger. He just killed Gu Yingqiu's physical body without harming the other person's soul. He just remembered that there is a virtue in life in heaven and wanted to give the other person a chance to reincarnate and become a new person. However, after Gu Yingqiu's death, she not only did not go to the underworld in the first time, but also took the opportunity to infiltrate Gu Hongyao's body, hoping to continue plotting against the latter. Gu Hongyao, do you really want to get rid of me so quickly? Even giving up the opportunity to reincarnate like this, just to catch me and support you. Gu Hongyao looked at the ball of light in her master's hand and felt a little emotional in her heart. With a flip of Mu Baiyu's wrist, a red jade plaque suspended in his palm. An invisible suction emanated from the jade plaque, directly covering the purple-red light cluster. Gu Hongyao. Hongyao's sister. I know I was wrong, just let me go. Gu Yingqiu, who was already a group of souls, instinctively sensed the terror of the soul card towards her soul, which made her scream in shock and beg for mercy from Gu Hongyao. Red Yao sister. Don't you want to know the whereabouts of your mother's body? As long as you let me go, I'll tell you where your mother's body was abandoned. The soul light with a red light lingering in the purple saw Gu Hongyao unmoved, and a mournful and sharp female voice came out from it. Gu Hongyao. You little bastard. My mother won't let you go. Before Gu Yingqiu's soul could be sucked into the soul card, it turned into waves of green smoke and completely dissipated in this world. This woman is also ruthless towards herself. She would rather completely lose her soul than be detained by this soul card. A white light flashed in Mu Baiyu's palm, and the red jade card shattered into powder. A gentle breeze blew by, and the powder transformed by the soul card dissipated with it. To her, if you feel unsatisfied with hatred, as a teacher, you can also reunite her soul. Gu Hongyao, who had not yet entered the realm of spiritual cultivation, did not know what the meaning conveyed by her master's words represented. After hearing her master's words, she gently shook her head and said. The disciple did not feel unsatisfied. Since her soul had completely dissipated, the grudge between me and her had also been written off. Well, since you're satisfied, let's call it a day. Mu Baiyu nodded lightly. He immediately looked at Li Guanqi and slowly spoke, Little Li, when will the apprenticeship ceremony for this seat be ready? Upon hearing this, Li Guanqi, the contemporary leader of Yingqiu sect, quickly replied. Report to Senior Mu, no later than 3 days later. 3 days later. Mu Baiyu raised her hand and lightly waved, and Gu Hongyao, who was originally supported by Qin Baiwei, drifted towards him. Yan, remember to ask your disciples to bring the Youlan Hua Rot Pill. As soon as he finished speaking, the figures of him and Gu Hongyao disappeared into the courtyard. Li Guanqi and others looked at the suddenly disappearing Mu Baiyu and Gu Hongyao, feeling a little emotional in their hearts. Senior Mu, his actions are still as free as ever. Master. Chu Qianyang's somewhat timid voice pulled Li Guanqi's thoughts back to reality. The leader of Yingqiu sect, who had come to his senses, looked at his disciple's expression of wanting to say something but not daring to say it. He smiled helplessly. Qianyang, what do you want to say? Just put it bluntly, these senior uncles of yours are not pedantic people either. Just now, that wooden master. Senior Mu, who exactly is he? Chu Qianyang was curious about Mu Baiyu's identity. After all, she, along with Su Jianjian and Yang Liujiao, could see that her master and uncle's attitude towards her was completely inferior. Master Mu. Li Guanqi's expression was also somewhat complicated. After a while, he slowly spoke up, Qianyang, as long as you know, Master Mu is the first leader of our Yingqiu sect, Yu Wuxiao, and Yu Zushi is a contemporary figure. A person from the same era as Master Yu. Chu Qianyang's charming little face, with a rosy little mouth, hesitated to close in surprise. So. Master Mu asked us to call him Master Uncle. Isn't this a mess of seniority? Since Master Mu likes your younger generation to call him Shishu, then you should call him Shishu. Li Guanqi and others also felt quite puzzled when they heard their disciples' doubts. But there's no way. Whoever wants Mu Baiyu to have the highest seniority, as long as it makes him happy, Li Guanqi thinks the seniority should be more chaotic. Gu Hongyao only felt a flower in front of her. When the scene in front of her became clear again, she was already in a palace made entirely of carved glass. How about it? Are you satisfied with this place, disciple? The warm voice of Mu Baiyu reached her ears. Master, do you usually live here? Gu Hongyao looked at the surroundings and at the colorful koi jumping out of the water in the nearby pond, her eyes filled with love. Not bad, this is my master's residence. According to Li and his team, it should be called a blessed place in the cave. Mu Baiyu couldn't help but feel great when she saw that her disciples liked this palace. Master, he refers to the leader in this way, and the leaders also refer to master as senior. Does this mean that master's seniority is greater than that of the leaders? As soon as she thought of this, Gu Hongyao couldn't help feeling a little uneasy in her heart. Mu Baiyu noticed the changing thoughts of her disciple and smiled, saying, "What do you want to say to me, disciple? Just let me know." Master. Gu Hongyao pondered for a moment, organized some language, and then told her own master about calling herself Qing Baiwei and her martial uncle. "I'm calling the leader and his martial uncle. Isn't this causing the hierarchy between you, master, and the leader to become chaotic?" "It's okay," Mu Baiyu smiled and rubbed Gu Hongyao's head. "I don't mind these things, it's just a title." Little Li and his team just placed too much emphasis on these rules and regulations, otherwise they wouldn't have hesitated in front of the gate of Lingying for so many years.